What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with second part of What If Naruto was the mysterious student in HighSchool DxD who shocked all with hidden power. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of THSI beautiful creation. It's weird seeing our leaders fraternizing with our enemy like this, Xenovia. The blue-haired girl turned to her partner. Well, before Azazel's fall into disgrace, they were family. Irina mulled it over for a second. How gracious of Michael-sama and Gabriel-sama. None but our Lord can compare to their benevolence and compassion. Xenovia gave a nod. I agree. At the very least, he didn't have to spend time in the parks anymore. The police kept kicking him out of the place. He had no idea that sleeping there would cause people problems. It was called a public area, wasn't it? Damn, he was still bitter about that. He felt lied to. Next time they shouldn't call it public, if that was really the case. I guess he was unaware about the laws of loitering, said Rias. This is why he needs an education, Sona stressed with conviction in her tone. Admittedly, I agree. The Gremory heiress liked the idea, a lot. Perhaps, Naruto should attempt college as well, definitely achieve a doctorate. Then, he would have to stay in Kuo with her. Yes, that sounded like a great plan. Anyways, he also got new clothes to better fit in with the people around him. Orange jumpsuits just weren't in fashion. And they never will be. Though, surprisingly, he pulls it off well, Ino begrudgingly admitted. A shame, really. No one could appreciate his tastes. They'd catch on though, he was sure of it. Ino scoffed, in your dreams, Naruto. Nevertheless, he now usually sported a plain black t-shirt, a sleeveless burnt orange hoodie with a personalized red swirl at the back, dark blue jeans with a black belt, and a pair of white and blue sneakers. He tended to wear fingerless black gloves to complete his setup just in case. Wow, he looks good, Ino said in surprise, scanning her eyes over the attire that complemented his figure. It was entirely casual, but there was an appeal to it that she liked because it was different than her culture's fashion. The fact that Naruto was actually wearing something besides his tracksuit, it was like his uniform or something, made it all the more eye-catching. With a saucy smirk she spoke, not bad, Uzumaki. The Yamanaka turned only to see Hinata and Sakura staring at the blonde genin, hard. She could only chuckle, knowing that the Hyuga heiress' cheeks were burning thinking how handsome Naruto appeared. Though, Ino wondered what thoughts were plaguing her fellow medic. Naruto was still Naruto. And Naruto sometimes got into some trouble, usually with some punks here and there. Outside of some small scuffles though, he pretty much stayed low, and it seemed like he would stay that way. At least that was the case until recently. Unfortunately, while taking orders, a policeman entered the little restaurant where a clone of his was working as a waiter. While not wearing a henge, much to the blonde's simmering annoyance. Kakashi sighed. 2 months was a good run and it was longer than he expected. He'll take what he could get. That was the beginning of the end of his relatively free and peaceful life, made worse when he realized weeks later that he never questioned the events that were about to take place properly. Tsunade could only pity the brat. She honestly didn't know how she would act in his position. While shinobi were trained to adapt, endure and persevere, this was a whole different game. Great, it seemed she had accepted the possibility of another world. She really needed a drink. But that was, obviously, something for later. The policeman apparently noticed how young his clone looked, and mentioned that he should be at school right now, pushing him to go despite any and all protests. He has to go to school? Shikamaru exclaimed in abject horror. He pitied Naruto. He would never wish to experience daily life in a classroom ever again. However, Kiba laughed his ass off, poor bastard. Chunin Inuzuka, the teen straightened to attention at hearing his Hokage. Perhaps I should assign you a temporary position as an academy instructor. Kiba choked on air as he gaped. To teach some snot-nosed brats in a classroom withheld from active duty on field operations. Having to stick his nose in a book and drone on and on about some lecture that he wouldn't care for. It was cruel, like some kind of karmic retribution. He was basically being grounded like some child. No thanks, Hokage-sama. Her gimlet eyes scared the youth and he swore that she was enjoying it. Impressive, Graphia said with a hint of approval. I'd like to convene with her later if possible. At that declaration, the house of Gremory and Citri Sans Venolana felt hell freeze over. At the time, his clone was horrified that he would be forced to spend money to go to school when he was working already, let alone the prospect of going to school at all. Shikamaru understood, never again would he willingly subject himself to such an environment. But, very simply, the policeman would have none of it. If he was caught again, then he would get fined, and if he got fined, then he would get a record. Which meant that he would be in the system, and that definitely couldn't happen. He's certainly thinking about his situation. Shizune smiled in approval. Yes, I'm quite impressed. He's certainly matured, said Tsunade. Kakashi hummed before contributing, such a situation will force anyone to, really. So after grimly realizing that the cops in the area now probably have a rough idea of how he looked like after that, and that there was no way that he could permanently have a henge up whenever he left home without messing up once or twice, he decided to just go to the most dreaded of all institutions. Sona only rolled her eyes as Akano and Tsubaki giggled. Kuo Academy was the closest high school available and Naruto wasn't too picky, so he applied to go and was eventually accepted after forging some papers. A high school? Such a strange concept, mused Tsunade before she smiled. I like it. It would offer civilians a better opportunity and grant us future prospects. It's something worth investing in, Shizune. I understand, Tsunade-sama. I've made note of it. The apprentice jotted down a few scribbles on a notepad she produced. Good. And that was why the shinobi was heading back home, having woke up a little early to quit some of those odd jobs that he had before. He was heading back home to change into his new school uniform, preparing himself for his first day. Oh, Naruto's going to wear one. I wonder if he could pull it off. It seems a bit too formal for him, Ino mused. A bit jealous that her fellow blonde could sample the fashion of another world. The blonde almost vomited at the thought, already more than a little sick about the fact that he was going at all. There are people who would kill to have such an opportunity, Sona stated, a bit annoyed with her schoolmate's attitude. Why does this shit happen to me? The teen wondered aloud, stuffing his hands into his pocket petulantly. It was a genuine question with no real answer. As was the usual, Mio couldn't fight the bitter smile marring her features. That was a question she had asked herself repeatedly after the death of her adoptive parents, and it was now blaring in her mind up to 11. How do I respond to this? She had no idea how to handle this revelation regarding Naruto. A part of her wanted to deny it, to rebel against such nonsense. However, she understood she couldn't afford to act like a foolish child. Reality just wouldn't tolerate such behavior. The redhead inhaled deeply, feeling so uncertain of herself, of life, and it scared her. She had finally found an anchor, security and stability. She had found a home. She had established her family in Maria and Naruto, and now it was possibly at risk. Such bullshit. What do I do, now? Her fingers combed her bangs as she searched for an answer, finding the act surprisingly calming. The hybrid couldn't think of anything, but she knew one thing for sure. Mio didn't want Naruto disappearing from her life, she wouldn't let him. She focused on the still image of the blonde. You're my brother and I won't let go. Mio-sama. The girl turned to her friend and guardian who was gazing at her with obvious concern. Maria had always been a source of comfort, always ensuring her well-being. Mio appreciated her efforts and made note to express her gratitude more often. The redhead grasped the succubus hand and whispered, I'll be fine, I promise. An understanding nod and smile was her response. Well, that was quite informative, said Shizune. A lot of things have been cleared up, Kakashi responded. Though, there is the matter of how he has befriended our fellow viewers. Probably from the school he is attending. That is a surprise in and of itself, Tsunade joked in an effort to improve her mood. Her first apprentice gave a smile in acknowledgement. Well, let's see how his first day at school goes, Kakashi said. There was a joke in there somewhere, he thought. So, Issei began, is it right to assume Naruto is an alien? Everyone only stared at him, unsure if he was serious. What? It's a legitimate question. Just shut up, pervert. Saji shook his head in disbelief. Are you picking a fight, Bucket Boy? Before Saji could respond, the C-Tree heiress interjected, let's continue. The boy could only pout in defeat. Of course, after switching clothes to his stuffy school clothing, he began to make his trek towards his new and legal torture session. Oh, he cleans up well. He definitely gains some points, Ino remarked. She was impressed by how just a change of clothes can improve Naruto's appearance. What do you think, Hinata? The Hyuga heiress squeaked. Ah. Naruto-kun looks handsome. It was so strange, the girl thought, to speak about her romantic interest out loud to anyone. It was something she never really did. Was this what women considered as gossip? Is that so? Well, what's your opinion, Sakura? A beat of silence passed and Ino turned to look at her best friend, curious about her reticence. The blonde then snorted as she noted the medic with her mouth agape in obvious surprise. Well, that explained the girl's silence. And, as per the usual for him, another problem became immediately apparent to him when he neared the horrible institution. Throughout the 2 months that he has been stuck in Japan, he has discovered a great many things that this world held secret. Especially from the unknowing human beings that casually lived their days in relative safe ignorance. The Konoha group quirked their eyebrows in interest. It was probably better for everyone that way. Without any energy sources in their bodies, there was no real way of fighting back against other beings that did have such powers. What is he talking about? It's almost as if he's speaking about the super. Tsunade began before her eyes widened in realization. She turned around and gazed at Yasaka and Kuno. A second later, the buxom Hokage turned to Kuroka, who offered her a smirk in response. Natural. The other shinobi were startled by their Hokage's analysis. It made sense now, the humanoid yokai they have encountered. The fact that the other, perceived, humans were at ease in their presence. However, there was still something amiss. Naruto had observed that he couldn't sense anyone's chakra. So, how was it that these humans had chakra? Unless... Great, another question that needed an answer. Neji, Ino called, gaining the attention of everyone in the audience. I know you said that they all have an energy core, but are you sure? As a sensor, I can feel their biosignatures and none feel like chakra. The only signatures that come close to chakra are The blonde trailed off, unsure how to identify the individuals she was gazing upon. Yokai, Yasaka provided. My daughter and I are Kitsune yokai. Nya tilde, a nekosho of the Nekomata yokai. Kuroka supplied with an enchanting smile. Like from folklore, Shizune blurted out in surprise. Well, that depends on your world's folklore, Nya tilde. The Miku no Ichi blushed in embarrassment. She would really need to adapt to the idea of other worlds soon before she made a fool of herself. The supernatural is a vast realm, Sirzek said. It's impossible to quantify it. It's constantly evolving, just like humanity. We'll keep that in mind. Tsunade responded with a nod. Yes, there were other beings that existed besides the humans, staying hidden from them as much as he was. He discovered this fact completely by accident, mostly by accidentally entering zones where normal humans seemed to avoid unconsciously. It probably had something to do with the barrier-like thing that they put into place when such fights began, of which he, in typical fashion, kept getting caught up in during his 2-month free roam. The shinobi groaned at hearing this. How typical of Naruto. He still had no idea how he managed to remain anonymous after the first few brawls he got caught up in. That's some ridiculous luck, Azazel commented. He only knew of 2 groups so far. The people with the white wings and the people with black wings, which apparently hated one another. Ah, that must be us. Azazel and the Seraph chorused. The shinobi all glanced in their direction. So, your group isn't human? Kakashi asked, curious of their species. A majority of our group isn't human, Michael stated. 6 within are, the rest. Well, I'm sure you'll find out. He smiled, much to the disappointment of the Konoha group. They really wanted to know. After hearing their hateful and biting insults aimed at one another, he eventually learned what they were called. Angels and fallen angels, respectively. Really? Tenten asked in curiosity as she glanced over to the male seraph. Michael stood up before gesturing for his sister to do so as well. Azazel, would you care to join us? A beat of silence passed. Fine, I'm only doing it because I know I'll look badass. Gabriel only rolled her eyes, though her small smile spoke volumes. With nary an effort, all 3 angels manifested their multiple pairs of wings and unfurled them. Power radiated off them, yet it wasn't oppressive despite how vast it was. The Konoha group were shocked into silence at the magnificence of the 3 individuals. It was the ideal of angels personified, and the contrast between the color of their wings only reminded them of a duality. It was captivating. This is such an incredible sight, Xenovia. Irina exclaimed, gushing over the sight of her leaders while her partner nodded in agreement. The awe was apparent in both. "Issei," Rias called out, gaining the stupefied boy's attention. "Do you sense that?" A nod was her response. "That is the power that you can eclipse from the potential within you." The reincarnated devil's eyes widened dramatically. He turned his gaze over to the angels once again. "I can surpass that?" He swallowed as he glanced down to his hand where his sacred gear was resting. A few seconds later, a hand came into his view grasping his own, and he followed it to see Asia smiling. It was then and there he understood. "Yeah, I will surpass that. At least, for your sake." After a moment, the angels dispelled their wings and sat down. Though, Azazel spoke out in curiosity. "I'm surprised you didn't reveal yourselves, Sirzex, Seraphal." Both only smiled, apparently coming to an understanding with each other. "Where's the fun in that?" Leviathan chirped giddily. "True," Lucifer played along. "Plus, from how this story is flowing, I'm sure they'll find out eventually." Graphia could only sigh. Now, he didn't know why exactly they were fighting, but he was sure there was a reason. Probably. Gabriel glared at Azazel, who only whistled in faux innocence. Eventually, he broke down under her penetrating stare. Such an expression didn't belong on his sister. "Come on, don't look at me like that. It's all your fault, brother." "Wait, brother?" Tsunade interjected in question. "You're all siblings?" She received a nod from all three angels before Michael spoke. "It's a long story. I'll take your word for it." Nevertheless, the entire thing was bizarre, but at least it was good to know. There would be no unhealthy surprises for Uzumaki Naruto. Thank you very much. Now, the problem with the school he was about to enter in was the fact that the very area seemed to be teeming with foreign energy. The Konoha group all gazed at the students of Kuo, and a few offered smiles in response. Now, the shinobi were curious. Foreign energy that he was not familiar with. "Well, if there are angels, are there devils as well?" Sakura asked. It was definitely something to think about. Basically, there were more than just regular humans in Kuo Academy. But he already enrolled by this point, and if he tried to back out now after he was already enlisted in the school roll, then he would without a doubt attract attention to himself. Naruto clenched his fist, determination firing up his eyes as he made his decision while waiting to make his entrance. Since he couldn't force a clone to take his classes, for the obvious reason that any damage it took would make it pop, he would just have to attend this school normally for a little bit and remain anonymous. The blonde's ear perked up slightly when he heard his new teacher call his name from behind the door he was leaning on, giving him flashbacks of all of the times that Iruka-sensei roared out his name in anger. "I expected as much," Sona dully stated. "I guess he's a troublemaker in your school as well," Sakura said, receiving nods from every Kuo Academy attendee. She could only sigh in fond exasperation. Even in another world he wouldn't change. Well, she hoped. Ah, good times. Now, Naruto, with his new academy uniform unbuttoned with an orange shirt under it, knocked onto the door to announce his entrance. Just like that book on Japanese etiquette told him to do. He just has to wear orange, huh? Well, Sakura, Naruto wouldn't be himself without some kind of orange wear. As she thought about it, the lone girl of Team 7 had to agree with her sensei. Ah, how proud Ba-chan would be. "What, he's taken lessons in etiquette?" Tsunade asked in astonishment. Sona quirked her eyebrow. "Well, I don't know how he was before, but Naruto is very cordial." The shinobi only stared at her, mouths agape in incredulity. "I'm serious." The Hokage smiled widely in response as she mentally cheered. Same could definitely be said for Sai, for that matter. "Enter please, Uzumaki Naruto." The teacher repeated from inside the classroom, tone impatient after having to call twice. Naruto just grinned in response. It was about time for him to make an entrance, one that would give everyone a good impression of him from the beginning. If he was going to do this school thing again, then he was not gonna have a repeat of his ninja academy years, definitely not. Was Foxy-kun that bad of a student? Kiba decided to respond to Akano, trying to form an impression for the beauty to think about. Who knows, maybe he could score with one of these girls. With a smirk, he spoke. "Yeah, I used to hand his ass to him every day back then. He was the dead last of our graduating class. Oh my, he's come so far. Especially if the dead last saved you." The Inuzuka choked on air as his companions smirked and giggled. Rias only sighed in exasperation as she noted Akino's smile. "Leave it to her, queen. to use an innocuous statement to teach someone their place. Even if she did approve of the tactic. So with that ambition in mind, the shinobi slid the door open and entered the classroom, making sure to take note of his soon-to-be classmates' expressions. Most of them were completely indifferent so far. Some girls gave him shy smiles and some of the boys gave him challenging stares for whatever reason. I understand them, Issei confessed. Damn blondes always attracting girls, he finished with a glare towards his fellow devil, Yuto. The knight only smiled sheepishly in response. The Konoha group raised an eyebrow at the boy. However, Ino took offense to his comment. What's wrong with blondes, huh? Issei didn't know how to respond. As such, Rias took pity and answered for him. The average natural hair color in Japan is dark, from brunette to black. People like us would be seen as exotic. Ino blinked. Oh, so, you're saying Naruto would be attracting girls left and right? A sniffle gained the attention of everyone towards Issei. The blonde bastard has a following in school. Another sniffle directed everyone towards Saji. The lucky bastard doesn't know how good he has it. High school students tend to have a hyper-focus on romance, Rias supplied. The Konoha group only stared at both young men despite Ino and Sakura acknowledging their hypocrisy in the act. The others didn't need to know, though. Weird, he didn't even do anything yet. The young man moved to stand in front of the chalkboard, preparing to give his introduction to what would be his class for the foreseeable future. Welp, he'd better make sure that everyone knew exactly what he was about. Yo! Naruto shouted without hesitation, an upbeat tone to his voice. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. I like ramen, my friends, those who are friendly to me, and those who I consider precious to me. I hope we can all be good friends, and if not, I will just beat you up so we could become good friends later. Datbeo. To end his declaration, he made sure to give everyone a thumbs up and a winning smile, blinding everyone there with his happy demeanor. Laughter ensued, filling the terrace with life. That last part didn't make sense, Azazel chuckled. Neji and Yuki disagreed, thinking it was a bit prophetic. Though their reaction was not what he expected, as everyone present gave him incredulous looks, while outright gaping at him for his unknowingly provocative speech. Did he say something weird? Yeah, you did, Issei drawled. The teacher eventually got over his own shock and coughed into his hand to get everyone's attention. That was nice, Uzumaki-san. Now can you please take the seat next to Nonaka-san near the window? The shinobi just blinked at the teacher's total lack of enthusiasm but eventually shrugged it off and walked to the classmate he was directed to. Figuring that there were simply some people that he couldn't get a rise out of. He'd break him in, he was sure of it. The girl he was directed to go to was wearing the typical female uniform of Kuo Academy and was quite the pretty girl. Yuki felt her cheeks burn at the admission. It wasn't even something he noted out of admiration, it was simply a fact. The heroine really didn't know what to think, but she would admit to feeling happy, the pull on the corner of her lips quite telling. She had neck-length light blue hair with a braid on the right side of her face and a white headband to keep her hair in order, despite the fact that she had an ahoge on the crown of her head. Her vivid yellow eyes, framed by the soft features on her face, locked onto him as he was making his way towards her. The girl, Nonaka was her name, nodded to him in acknowledgement as he sat down to her left near the window. First impression, a good person. Awesome. Despite this positive development, he still had to actually listen to a lecture by his new teacher, meaning that he had to do his best to not fall asleep from the lesson that was being thrust to him. He failed utterly. Another round of laughter ensued though, both Yuki and Sona groaned over the act. Even in another world, he would avoid studying theory. Sakura shook her head, the things that he could learn could be monumental. Knowledge he could gain for the benefit of Konoha or the entire continent. It is a shame, Tsunade confessed, the doctor within wondering how far medicine could progress without chakra. If it's knowledge you seek, perhaps a cultural exchange could be arranged. Azazel offered, anticipation and glee painting his visage. Tsunade paused in thought before coming to a decision. That's not a bad idea. Oh, I would love to participate as well, Michael requested before looking over to his antithesis. I believe you could benefit as well, Sirzex. Yes, that would be a great idea. It will help everyone to have a basic understanding of our respective worlds. But, Seraphal whined, that would spoil the story for everyone, Sirzex-chan. I had to agree with her, Gabriel chimed in. I say we learn naturally as we progress with the story. Patience is a virtue and patience is rewarded. No, no, and no. Azazel shook his head. Don't do this now, sister. This is important. The female seraph pulled out a coin, then, we flip for it. Done. The fallen snatched it out of his sister's hands and flipped it into the air, heads. 'Cause you can never go wrong with head. The innuendo was not missed by anyone, scowls marring the features of the gathered women quite telling, even if their cheeks were burning. As the coin sailed through the air, Azazel grinned confidently, entirely certain in his victory. Before the coin landed, he declared his enthusiasm. I can't wait to learn about the elemental nations. The coin bounced on the ground a bit before finally coming to a rest, revealing that it landed on best 2 out of 3. Azazel begged, much to the amusement of Seraphal and Gabriel. You sore loser, deal with it. They chorused together. Naruto woke with a start with some drool on his chin, his eyes snapping to check his surroundings, only managing to take in the empty classroom that he was occupying. Oh shoot. The blonde forced himself up, a little confused and disgruntled, until he realized that he wasn't alone in the small room. Blue eyes moved to the right, catching the calm and collected gaze of his new class neighbor. What happened? Where is everyone? Naruto asked, his words slurred as he tried to wake himself up. He forgot how ridiculously boring school was, but he was sure that not even Iruka-sensei was that bad before. It was like watching paint dry with how entertaining it was to listen to the teacher's lecture. How long did he have to do this again? The period ended, Uzumaki-san, just now. Before he left, our teacher asked me to give you a little bit of a tour around the school since this was your first time here at Kuo Academy. Nonaka stated simply, that calm air of hers firmly in place. Wait, the period ended? How long was he asleep exactly? Wait, more importantly, he couldn't have this girl just follow him wherever. He had his own ways of finding out more about places, and he didn't need a babysitter. I disagree, Sona said, wishing of a way to keep the blonde in check. We'll find a way to contain his mayhem someday. Hopefully, Tsubaki. Rias and Akano giggled at the exchange. It must have been difficult being in the student council. Namely, clones. But he obviously couldn't do something like that near her. Hey, don't worry about it. I can find my way around just fine. Naruto explained with a cheesy grin on his face, confident as always. He hoped that his words would convince the strangely stoic girl that he was fine, but his hopes were dashed by her next statement. I am the class representative, this is my duty, not a favor for you, Uzumaki-san, and I am adamant about completing my duties. Nonaka stated with her intense gaze staring him down. Yuki squirmed, feeling a bit guilty. The hero was well aware that she was so adamant about it because she wanted to isolate Naruto back then. Naruto stared back, if only out of pure stubbornness, but he eventually gave in regardless. There was no point in arguing against something so small. He just let her have her cookie, and then do what he had to do afterwards. What did he have to lose? He would just be killing an hour, nothing important. Okay, you win, Nonaka-san. Please lead the way, Datbeo. Naruto relented easily, offering a small smile in order to hopefully lower her tension. It didn't work, as Nonaka just stared at him for a few spare seconds before she turned around and grabbed her bag to leave. This is a bit suspicious, Hinata opined, taking note of the girl's body language. It screamed of discipline and training. She turned her gaze to Yuki, who only stared back. The Hyuga was confident of her assessment and gave voice to it, you're not a simple civilian. Yuki blinked in surprise, impressed by the girl's deductive skills. Then again, the white-eyed girl was a kunoichi, so she must have training of a sort. As such, she nodded in confirmation, which gained suspicious looks from a few shinobi. An act she didn't appreciate, if only because she didn't want to have any tension between herself and his comrades. Naruto is my friend. The shinobi softened their gazes upon her statement, much to her hidden relief. The blonde watched her go, sweat dropping at her attitude, but followed after her regardless. So Nonaka followed through with what she was assigned to do, taking him around Kuo Academy to see all that the high school had to offer. Introducing him to all of the facilities and important areas. Naruto had to admit, he was impressed at the sheer size of the place, even though it was ostensibly just a high school so far. Though apparently there were other parts of the academy that extended beyond high school, though he wasn't sure. Tsunade whistled, impressed with the academy grounds. She would definitely take notes regarding their education system. Hopefully, she would be able to see a hospital as well. The entire tour took only about a half an hour due to her quick and efficient introductions to everything they saw, causing him to suspect that she wasn't that much happier to be there herself than he was. It didn't really offend him or anything though, he has gone through much worse and learned to not take things so personally as a young adult. The Kuo Pact blinked in surprise at hearing that tidbit of information. What the hell did Naruto experience if he learned such a skill? Mio stared at her brother with narrowed eyes, suspicion arising within her. How many more secrets was he keeping? Hey, he was sure that his 12-year-old self would demand what her problem was with him though. Uzumaki-san. Naruto blinked, forcing himself to come back to reality as he realized that he must have been musing to himself for a while, since Nonaka was just staring at him, waiting for an answer to whatever she had just said. He took a quick look around and realized that they were at the rooftop of the building, with a beautiful view of the rest of the academy grounds available to them. It is an amazing sight, commented Shizune. It's perfect for cloud gazing. Ino groaned, I don't think I'll ever understand your fascination with clouds, Shikamaru. Maybe you should give it a try then. No thanks, lazy ass. The Nara only shrugged in response, cloud gazing wasn't for everyone. Actually, why were they even up here? Was this a part of the tour? Naruto then turned back to Nonaka, who was still waiting. Sorry, I was just thinking about something. Can you repeat? Whatever you just said? Nonaka sighed, but did as was asked and repeated herself. I said, is this a good place to stop the tour, Uzumaki-san? On much firmer ground now that he knew what was asked, he grinned and nodded. Yep, thanks for showing me around the school, Nonaka-san. It was a real help. I'll see you around in class, alright? The shinobi was already in the midst of turning around as he was speaking, preparing to head out and escape from the confines of the school. He's had more than enough today. Wait. As demanded, the blonde did indeed wait, freezing himself from opening the door to enter the stairs to enter the building again. There is something that I wish to ask of you, Uzumaki-san. The young woman stated as much as asked, not exactly giving much room to deny what she was asking of him. Naruto turned around and looked at Nonaka, his own blue eyes connecting with her yellow ones, a hidden intensity hidden within their depths. Those are the eyes of a warrior, Kakashi noted, getting several nods from his fellow ninja. Looks like you were spot on, Hinata. I'm sure Kurenai would be proud. Thank you, Kakashi-sensei. Why was she looking at him like that? What are you, Uzumaki Naruto? Nonaka questioned, no, demanded with a new sharpness in her eyes and face. The shinobi took a step away from the teen, sensing some semblance of hostility from her, shocked at what she was asking. Indeed, her body took on a more aggressive tone as she spread her legs apart and clenched her fists, almost as if she was ready to fight with him at a moment's notice. I'm sorry, can you repeat the question, Nonaka-san? I must have misheard you. Naruto tried to clarify with a newfound nervousness, trying to reassure himself that the girl in front of him had no idea about the fact that he wasn't a normal human. Nonaka was completely human, of that he had no doubt, so it was impossible for her to learn of his abilities. Right? Is that right? Tsunade simply said as she gazed at Yuki from her peripheral. So, there were humans capable of contending with the supernatural. The question on her mind, however, was how did they fare against it? Could humanity even stand as an equal? Her gaze drifted over to Ophis. Even now, the little girl's presence was overwhelming. Just what exactly was she? But what if some humans could? Did he do something that gave him away? And who else possibly knew of his unique power? This wasn't good at all. Don't play stupid, Uzumaki-san, you seem to be human. But the reported energy that you've been giving off suggests otherwise, and an unknown variable cannot be tolerated during this point in time. Nonaka said with growing antagonism, voice firm. From what Yuki-san implies, I'm guessing there is political tension within the supernatural. Shikamaru asked out loud, hoping someone would clarify. Unfortunately, there is, Sirzex answered. As she was speaking, a green aura began to envelop around her arms, a sword appearing from the energy, as well as a pair of metallic gauntlets that formed around her arms. Conjuration of a weapon and armor. How interesting, Kakashi noted. It's certainly different. Was it created from the green energy? Shizune murmured to herself, taking note for research later. It just wouldn't do to not try to understand this new world. Who knows what kind of enemies they could encounter? At least then, they would be prepared. I will ask you one more time. Uzumaki Naruto, what are you? Nonaka finished, her newly formed blade pointing at Naruto. Naruto just stared at her. The blade she just created was aimed at him with ease and confidence, with the poise befitting of a warrior. He made a mistake. He spent so much time focusing on non-human threats that he completely ignored the powerful humans that hid among the weak humans. Yes, quite the oversight, Naruto. Kakashi said with a smile, but I think it's only fair to pardon you for it. This blunder can only be described by Naruto in one word. Fuck. Laughter sounded off at the oath before Sirzex spoke. Well, that was quite interesting. I'm hoping to see more. Yes, this story definitely seems to be worth a read. Venelana smiled. I do wonder how he'll adapt to our world. I'm pretty sure he hasn't seen everything it has to offer. I'll admit, seeing the brat stumbling along on the big screen should be pretty fun, Jin quipped. I hope I'll be able to observe more of his combat potential. The kid has some interesting abilities. Upon hearing Azazel's statement, the Gremory peerage winced as they remembered their, admittedly, humiliating defeat in a spar. They hoped the moment wasn't shown for the sake of their collective pride. The group could still feel phantom pains, though Akano would admit to secretly delighting in it. So, I guess we have an answer to Naruto's whereabouts. Kakashi started as he looked upon his leader. Yeah, the Hokage lamely responded. She wasn't thrilled with the discovery. I guess the only thing we can do is continue watching. Her shinobi nodded in agreement, hoping to know the kind of adventure their missing comrade had experienced. Hopefully, he had endured and persevered like a true ninja. Chatter resounded through the terrace as the screen faded to black. The audience spoke amongst themselves, reviewing what they had viewed and learned. Separate groups sharing their opinions over the unique experience. So, this boy, Naruto-san. Roswise spoke, gathering the attention of the faction leaders. It's fair to assume he may be the catalyst that brings us together in the future. Possibly, Sirzex replied as he caressed his wife's hand. I have already met with Naruto and apparently, so has Azazel and Jin. He only needs to meet the Seraph to identify most of the biblical leaders. Seraphal pouted upon her seat, her cheek resting on her palm. I feel left out. I kind of want to meet him. It's not every day you meet someone from another realm. As she trailed off, her face scrunched up in thought. Reality? Oh, it doesn't matter. She fixed her eyes upon her younger sister conversing with her friends. So Tan seems to have bonded with him and I make it a priority to know who's in her circle of friends. I wouldn't worry too much. Riet Tan seems to trust the boy and he coincidentally achieved something I was hoping for. Sirzex smiled appreciatively alongside Graphia. I'm really grateful to him. Leviathan responded with an inquisitive look which he indicated to speak about later. Well either way, this situation is unprecedented. A series of nods from her fellows were offered in response. After a few beats of silence, she continued. Azazel, you've met him. What's your opinion of Whiskers? The fallen angel snorted before taking a moment to gather his thoughts. Well, as interesting as he is. He bobbed his head as if shuffling through a mental dictionary. I find him to be a bit strange, he said, and quirked eyebrows was his only response. I don't know what to tell ya. Though, I do believe him to be dependable. Yes, that much was true. After all, he was on his way to meet the boy and make a request. Azazel couldn't think of a better candidate to entrust such a task to. Is that so? What about you, Jin-san? Seraphal asked, hoping to gain more information on the whiskered blonde to create a profile. While she knew she could form one by watching the show, she had the opportunity to gain opinions from established individuals equal to her social standing. He's a rude-mouthed brat. Oto-sama, please. Yuki chided her father as most of the gathered audience attempted to stifle their laughs. The seniors of the Konoha group attempted the same as they overheard the ancient man thinking it was an apt description. As his chuckles tapered off, Jin smiled at his eldest daughter. He hoped Yuki wasn't too bothered by his joke. Well, I can't really say much. Naruto is a young man, but he still has some growing up to do. With inexperience comes mistakes and he's bound to make one or two, more like a few. The factional leaders agreed with him, nodding before he continued, however, my daughter trusts him and I trust my daughter. Yuki felt a distinct pang after he finished speaking. His words felt heavy and she questioned if she was even worthy of that trust. She gazed at her father who looked upon her with affection, the sight oddly conflicting, both reassuring and accusatory. Even then, she thought about what she needed to do to preserve his expression. I don't want him to hate me. Well, two leaders feel secured in their respective relatives' well-being around young Naruto, Gabriel said, focusing on Serafal with a smile. That has to count for something. I guess, responded Leviathan. Though, she still wished to meet the boy herself. I wonder if it will show us meeting with him? The female seraph was truly interested in how such an event would proceed. That's another matter to think about, Roswise said with a tilt of her head. Just how far into the future will this book show us? Also, it seems highly invasive, like a breach of privacy. Even Naruto-san's thoughts are exposed before us. Most present grimaced in response, unsure how to feel about such a thing. The Valkyrie was right, though. The audience would definitely feel uncomfortable having their own thoughts and secrets exposed. Azazel spoke up. Well, it seems our host doesn't really care for that. The only thing we can do is press on. You are right, brother. Michael sighed before staring at the glowing book. I only pray that whatever we see does not sow discord among us. That was a sentiment most agreed with. Yuki released a heavy sigh, feeling exhausted from all the recent incidents she's faced. Compound unto it this event experience, and she was honestly praying to any higher entity that would listen for a small respite. A small moment to herself just to think. So many worries plagued her mind. Basara's impending recovery and how to approach him when he did. The pending conversation with her father in regards to Basara. Lastly, the revelation of Naruto's origins and most importantly, his mental health. Her heart skipped a beat, her fists clenched as she bit her lower lip. She wondered how Naruto was doing back in Kyoto and hoped that he wouldn't stress over their disappearance. Oni-chan. Yuki tuned her focus upon Kurumi, noting her sister's curiosity. That guy, Naruto. He's the one you mentioned over our correspondence, right? The elder heroine nodded, unconsciously relaxing much to Kurumi's hidden relief. The younger hero found herself surprised with Yuki's behavior. She knew her elder sister tended to internalize her worries and show no hints of them. Now, it was visibly affecting her body language. Kurumi had to ask if Naruto was responsible for this visible change in her sibling, and if so, she wondered what exactly their relationship entailed. Though, more importantly, she questioned if the elder boy was a positive influence for her sister. She somehow doubted that. What is he to you? Yuki took a moment to observe her sister, eyes a similar color yet far more emotive, focused, before breaking out into a small, soft and genuine smile. He's my first friend, Kurumi. The younger girl blinked as she processed the answer, and it was a beat later that she understood. The life of a hero was demanding. Rarely could a hero forge a bond outside of the organization due to the call of duty. And the call of duty would always create complications. The fact that Yuki found a person outside and unaffiliated with the tribe that could empathize with her circumstances and responsibilities was practically a miracle. Ironically, it was a miracle because Naruto originated from beyond their world. Kurumi would admit to feeling a bit jealous. However, she was also concerned. The otherworldly boy had his own responsibilities and interests. Who could say that Naruto's pursuits won't conflict with the hero tribe's mission? The young heroine was aware that her thoughts soared past the border of paranoia, but she was simply worried for her sister. Kurumi did not want to see Yuki, her dearest and only sister, hurt. And so, with an uncertain and weak smile, she resolved to simply observe their budding friendship and only intervene if necessary. I understand, Oni-chan. Maria observed her fellow audience speaking amongst each other. Every single person present had a connection to Naruto or apparently, from what she concluded, would at some point in the future. This book seemed to focus on her blonde housemate, and it was bound to focus on her and Mio as well. If that was the case. Oh, this isn't good. The succubus thought, dreading a possible, probable, revelation of her ward's parentage. At the moment, she felt claustrophobic, surrounded on all sides by possible enemies with no way out. Maria was aware that she, Mio, had the protection of the Mao, but that didn't take into account Azazel and especially the Seraph. And who's to say that the Satans would act in their defense if either faction were to take offense to their existence and commit to action? After all, Maria and Mio were their antithesis. Benevolent and merciful angels were heralded as, Maria snorted. They were warriors and veterans of a war spanning millennia. Blood drenched their hands and pure white wings. Damn it, this sucks. She really wanted to scream out her frustrations, preferably, UAL relief would be optimal. Either way, this entire situation was like a one-finger salute to all of her efforts. Maria and Naruto had been doing their damn best to ensure Mio a safe and normal life, as it could possibly be within the supernatural world. And this book will probably render it all fruitless. What crap, she sighed in defeat, aware that she couldn't do anything about it. Oh well, if it comes down to it. She gave a sidelong glance to her ward. Mio seemed to be lost in thought and she wondered what the younger girl was thinking. I'll make sure you live, Mio-sama. Maria would grit her teeth and clench her fists, all for Mio's sake. However, she'll do her damn best to survive. After all, she really wanted to tease Naruto into a stuttering and blushing mess. A smile pulled at her lips. She was aware that she was falling for the blonde and despite the complications present and arising, Maria didn't want to kill these feelings. Oh Naruto-sama, such a heartbreaker you are. Well, we seem to have learned far more than we were expecting. Sona said as she adjusted her glasses. She was at ease on the sofa, soft, long legs crossed and one arm laid languidly on her respective armrest and the other upon her lap. A queen was all one would think of upon first sight. Though, she would kill for some tea at the moment, Earl Grey preferred. Her gaze was directed at no one, but she knew her friend would respond to her. It was simply routine between them, to voice one's respective thoughts and be granted input from the other. It was an aspect of their appreciation for each other. Yes, we have, Rias confirmed as she gazed over the terrace out into the distance. Her arms and legs were crossed and her foot swung in the air, a telling sign of her distress. In her sight, the calm sea surrounding their apparent sanctuary was incredibly beautiful. How unfortunate that it failed as a distraction from her tumultuous thoughts. Another realm of humans and Naruto originates from there. Who could have guessed such a thing? A strained smile etched itself on her fair features, and it was only because of mere chance that I met him. She murmured to herself before shaking her head. That's how it was for everyone. All first meetings were simply chance, she reminded herself. Sona, you're taking notes, I believe? Yes, Tsubaki is doing so on her cell phone. Rias turned her sight over to the Cetri's queen, who sat poised typing away on her smartphone. She wondered what Tsubaki's opinion on the situation was. The vice president had been quiet since the start. Well, that was a thought for later. Bucko. Rias heard Akano speak and she directed her attention to her queen. The hybrid seemed to be colored curious, a pondering expression complemented by the small smile upon her fair features. She rested her chin on her palm, that very same arm propped on top of the sofa's armrest. Rias was a bit envious of her calm despite the earlier distress that was obvious to anyone observing her. The heiress wondered what her secret was, if she even had one. Do you think the Konoha group would be willing to speak with us about Naruto? Rias blinked and took a moment to think it over. She wasn't certain that they would as there seemed to be a bit of mistrust between the groups, or at least suspicion. Even the most unobservant would be able to sense the tension in the air and how conversations so far were approached with tact and caution. Well, those who cared for cordiality would do so. She had a feeling the Inuzuka boy would unwittingly cross a line. His personality screamed impulsive and unapologetic. There was a visible metaphorical line drawn just from seeing their seating arrangements. The Konoha group sat together on one end of the terrace while those of her homeworld, realm, sat at the other. That was surprising itself. The angels and heroes would readily align themselves with devils even if the act was subconsciously done. Better to ally with a known entity, the devil they know as opposed to the devil they don't. A wry smile snuck onto those alluring lips of the Gremory heiress. Humor aside, she was confident Sona had taken notice as well. Either way, a clear sign of where those gathered stood was painted for everyone. Although, there appeared to be an exception. The girl with violet hair who questioned the ninja group on Naruto's location upon her entrance sat by her lonesome, in between them. It was clearly a statement. She was aligned with no one and didn't want to be. There was something off about her that raised Ria's guard. The heiress would have to keep an eye on the relatively unknown girl. The devil pushed that concern aside to focus on her previous train of thought. Looking once more at the Konoha group, only one phrase could come to mind. Them against us, Rias thought to herself and immediately she felt a sharp pang of anxiety. If she and her group neglected to befriend the Konoha ninja, Eventually tension would break into possible conflict. And conflict with them would possibly, definitely, place her at odds with Naruto. That just wouldn't do. If Rias couldn't have what she desired, something she consciously ignored, the least she would accept and compromise for was Naruto's friendship. The devil heiress valued the whiskered human far too much. She wouldn't accept anything less. Just the thought of having Naruto as an enemy made her heart roar in defiance, as if to intimidate and drive off the creeping distress. She couldn't be weak here. As such, she resolved to approach that metaphorical line between the groups and invite one of the ninja to play hopscotch with her. Yes, that's perfect, she thought with a smile, and she would drag her entire peerage with her, Sona as well. She would invite that girl, Sakura. It would be wise to ingratiate herself to Naruto's teammate. A bit of pleasant talk, smiles and laughs, and then Rias would have the chance to learn more about her hero. Just referring to him like that made her cheeks burn. And she couldn't stop smiling. I don't see why not, Akeno. Rias. Sona interjected. Why are you smiling? Is something wrong with my smile, Sona? You have the devil's smile. Amusement bloomed upon Rias and Akeno. How witty of the Cetri. Oh, of course you would know, the redhead chuckled and a small smile was her only response. Well, back to your question, Akeno. We'll just have to make an effort to have them speak with us. But it would have to be later when we'll have the most opportune chance. The reincarnated fallen angel's face scrunched together, her confusion apparent. What do you mean? Have you not noticed? Look at the sky. Akeno did as suggested, observing the horizon. The bright blue sky was fading, dusk had come to visit. Is the sun setting? It seems so. A prominent frown sparked to life on Akeno, but then, what about our lives in Kuo? Surely, our disappearance won't go without notice. That's not even mentioning the Mao. The panic that would ensue. I am aware and surely they are as well. Rias combed her hair with her hand, trying to ease the creeping worry rising within her. All we can do is play ball with our host and get this over with. The disappearance of such prominent and influential figures could create such a disaster. Vultures and rats swooping in to claim power within the political vacuum, all with their own agendas. The fact that such a situation transpired within multiple factions made it all the worse. But Rias didn't want to think about that. It was far too complicated for her even with her political grooming. That was the world stage and she wasn't ready to step upon it. Or at least, she didn't want to do so alone. There was also a selfish part of her saying that it wasn't her responsibility. She felt as if she was betraying Naruto in his dream, and she felt like such a coward. However, was it truly wrong of her to feel so hesitant in confronting such a grand problem? Rias was still a high school student, trying to balance out her education with her life and responsibility as a devil, as an heiress. Could someone really fault her for wanting to indulge in a normal experience like a human academic career and all it entails before she dedicated her life to the prosperity and advancement of the Gremory family and Devil Society? She understood that she had to prove her worth to her society and family, but most importantly to herself. The red-haired devil had to prove she deserved her birthright. But still, damn, she really didn't want to think about this. I think it would be best if we shelve these thoughts for later. That would be for the best, said Sona. Akeno agreed with a nod before taking a moment to think. A few beats of silence passed and she spoke once again, so, I guess we'll be sleeping here until then. Oh well, nothing's wrong with a sleepover, she said before clapping her hands with a smile. It gives us a chance to gossip about a certain whiskered blonde. Rias chuckled alongside her while Sona rolled her eyes. She could definitely depend on her, queen, to help. Hey, Sakura, are you alright? Oh, Ino. The emerald-eyed Kunoichi trailed off. Her thoughts were rampant with the discovery of her teammate's situation. Another world. Sakura wondered just what kind of star Naruto was born under. Did that star even shine? The circumstances surrounding his life and the situations forced upon him were a bit overwhelming in her opinion. How has he not broken under all that pressure? No, that wasn't right. She had seen his moments of weakness ever since they were pubescent children. She just never thought much of it, and upon realization, Sakura felt like a failure of a friend. Perhaps she has been careless, inconsiderate, of Naruto's feelings. She scrunched her brow, thinking back to her youth and those few instances the Uzumaki had made an impression upon her. A child's isolation from other children. A child's ostracization within his home. A conscious act from their elder community residents. A child's expression showing confusion and hurt. A child's lonesome walk through the village and the whispers that would follow him. A child's exaggerated smile when ridiculed by his peers. A child's constant unruly behavior for any kind of attention. A child, she thought to herself, staring blankly at the black screen. A young shinobi hopeful desiring to be a hero. A young shinobi hopeful proclaiming to become Hokage, unaware of what it entailed. As if acknowledgement, validation, was all that mattered. Sakura felt her hands tremble as her thoughts delved further onto her teammate. The expression he wore when he promised to bring him back. Why did she feel so guilty upon having that thought? His failure to succeed and his near desperation to reassure her. How Naruto dismissed her concern for him upon the revelation of his status as a Jinchuriki. His anger over Gaara's death and the fate of Jinchuriki. The role and the expectations heaped upon them in the shinobi world. The lengths he would go to just to keep his promise to her. A monster Kabuto had identified Naruto as well as, a sad kid. She exhaled a weak and ragged breath, her body slack and mouth uncomfortably dry. Jiraiya's death, his disappearance. Don't think about it. I found him. She clenched her hands, tight enough to feel her nails digging into her palm. The slight pain worked well as a distraction from her depressing thoughts as she inhaled deeply. I found him. Sakura? Sorry, Ino. It's just kind of crazy to think about, she replied. The pink-haired girl was well aware of her evasion of thoughts as she turned her gaze upon the blonde. Don't you agree? Well, duh. Ino arched an eyebrow, but it's kind of exciting as well. Did you see that place? Some of those buildings were taller than the Hokage monument. Her face broke out into a curious expression. I wonder what else we'll see. Their society does seem more advanced than ours, stated Sakura. She wouldn't deny being interested. But, a world without chakra. That's hard to imagine. Ino grimaced, mentally agreeing with her fellow medic. Let's not forget the whole supernatural aspect. You know, Sakura started. We live in a world where people can bend the elements to their will as well as aspects of reality. A world with Biju and talking animals contracted as familiars. Where are you going with this? Ino asked with honest curiosity. Why are we so surprised? Because it's out of the norm of our established perception on society and reality. Tsunade interjected, angels? I've seen weird Kekai Genkai over the years, but nothing on that scale. And now, right in front of us are humanoid yokai. That takes the cake. Yes, that was something every ninja present agreed with. Two foxes and a cat with obvious anthropomorphic traits really made a statement. Naruto-kun is, apparently, their hero, said Shizune with an uncertain smile. She was fiddling with a pen as a notepad sat on her lap. I wouldn't put it past the brat to actually help them, said Tsunade, her arms were crossed under her magnificent bosom. Any man would love to have a glimpse if she was being so generous. Even if it's a bit hard to believe. The prejudice against the Biju was currently taking effect, the Hokage noted. But, it was only natural. The conditioning she as well as every citizen in the elemental nations grew up with was deeply rooted. The Biju were meant to be feared, they were akin to natural disasters. So, seeing these individuals with traits that could be associated with a Biju was alarming. Though, Tsunade wouldn't, be afraid. Especially not of Kuno. That little girl, kitsune yokai or not, was innocence personified. To treat her as anything less than a child was just wrong. It makes you wonder what other supernatural creatures are out there. Tenten pondered as her imagination was filled with known creatures of folklore. Looking up into the sky, she wondered if she would see a phoenix? A thunderbird? A dragon? So many possibilities. She was kind of excited. I just hope Naruto-kun didn't have too hard of a time adjusting, murmured Hinata. His well-being was always at the forefront of her mind these days. Ever since his disappearance she couldn't stop thinking about him. As you can see for yourself, he's managed well, Hinata-sama. Neji Nissan. He offered a small smile, one of confidence as he looked upon her. He secured enough money to support himself as well as his own residence. Despite this setback of him having to attend school. Really, that was incredibly amusing to him. He's managed just fine on his own. When you put it like that, Neji, said Tenten. It's actually quite impressive. It definitely was. The weapon mistress honestly didn't how she would approach such a situation. TCH, Kiba clicked his tongue in annoyance. It isn't that impressive. That stuff is just standard procedure when out in the field. I could do that just as easily. Of course, Kiba. Ino humored him with a mocking smile which did not detract from her beauty. Because, you could conjure a horde of cage bunchin to take multiple jobs as a source of foreign income and secure your own house. Within 2 months as well, she continued, having a bit of fun at his expense. In an entirely new world with a different culture and possibly different language. But, I get it. Even if you struggle, you can always fall back on dog speak. A few within the ninja group chuckled and or snickered at Ino's ribbing of their comrade. Everyone but Kiba was grinning as the boy himself was promptly chastened and grumbling. Don't stress over it, Kiba. Tenten added with one last blow to his pride, you can easily set up a private business for dog care. Laughs sounded off in response as the Inuzuka sunk into himself, walking a dog, grooming and training them. You can do it all. Kiba exhaled a suffering sigh, I miss Akamaru. My partner would have my back. But, he couldn't let this slide. He needed to avenge his dignity and the only way how was to direct this roast somewhere else. The hell you laughing at, Shikamaru? You wouldn't do any better than me. Bastard, the Nara thought. Don't put this evil on me. Still, if Kiba thought he was easy pickings, then he was sorely mistaken. You're right, I wouldn't know what to do, that was clearly a lie, but it was easier to just agree. The simplest solution to evade a roast was to kill the fire. It's just too troublesome to think about. So, kindly leave me out of this, would ya, dog whisperer. The Inuzuka deflated further as his friends and allies laughed at the genius jab. A moment later, the book pulsed and the screen flickered. The surprising action made the audience pause as it grabbed their attention. Looks like it's starting up again, said Rossweiss with obvious anticipation in her tone. At her declaration, everyone fell into silence and eased into their seats. Well, Naruto, Madaka thought, her focus directed to the screen. Though, if anyone observed her they wouldn't be able to discern if she was truly interested in the screening. She was still quite the beautiful sight, arms and legs crossed, a regal air about her. Show me how you fare in my home. As Naruto stared at Nonaka's blade, he had to remind himself of something vitally important. Something that he would definitely forget if he didn't remind himself constantly. Are you aware of what that is, Kakashi? Tsunade asked with obvious curiosity. The man shook his head, no, ma'am. Naruto never divulged such a thing to me. Well, into the inner workings of his mind we go, she joked. It was a simple fact that most people wouldn't really think too much about, and something that Naruto was forced to think about ever since he realized that he wasn't anywhere near the elemental nations anymore. He was, without a doubt, a ninjutsu specialist. Very true, Kakashi stated with a nod. He was impressed his student could generalize his own skill set. Really? Tenten asked with an unsure expression. Wouldn't his liberal yet tactical use of clones be considered as bunshinjutsu or nintaijutsu like Asuma-sensei? Yes, as he does favor taijutsu over ranged combat, but you've seen his fight against pain. He's branched out into other disciplines of combat in his own unique way. Oh, yeah, she smiled sheepishly towards the silver-haired man. Kind of forgot after what we've learned. He only smiled in response, entirely considerate of her error. Upon hearing this, Rias smiled widely. He's a ninja. Having it reconfirmed was just music to her ears. At this point, Naruto was coming close to her ideal man and he had many redeeming traits she desired in a partner. He really was near perfect. Is something wrong, Mio-sama? Maria asked of her ward. The hybrid turned her sight onto her friend. It's just, really, a ninja? Disbelief mired her face as she tried really hard to associate Naruto with the warriors of shadow and stealth. There was just an obvious disconnection between the two. The succubus chuckled, I understand. Naruto-sama doesn't really adhere to the stereotypes regarding ninja. A sly grin slipped onto her beautiful face, though, it would be really amusing to see him running around in black pajamas peeping on women and stealing their panties. Ma Maria, he wouldn't do that. The elder girl only chortled as Mio stared incredulously at her. The blush adorning the redhead's cheeks only fueled her amusement. Now most people would think that this wasn't vital information, that this was more of a bit of trivia rather than anything truly important. Well, they would be wrong. Ninjutsu, in its purest form, was a ninja art that was geared towards the destruction of the enemy. Is it just me or is there something strange about him being academically correct? No, it's not just you, Ino. Sakura said with an arched eyebrow. The disbelief was apparent upon both girls. I'm just as surprised. Oh, okay. Ninjutsu, Sona hummed, remembering most of Naruto's habits in and out of school. It oddly fits. Though, I wonder what other disciplines of combat has his culture established, and which of those disciplines he's capable in. Thinking of ways to incapacitate and capture Kaichu? Akano asked while making an effort to restrain her giggles. I can hope, can't I? The sea tree replied with a strained smile. Don't let yourself sound so pessimistic, Sona. Rias said with a teasing smile, I'm sure you'll capture him one day. To hell with you. They both burst into melodic laughter after that response. It was, in every shape and form, all based on destroying the enemy by overpowering or overwhelming them. Ninjutsu was rarely, if ever, truly subtle or quiet. Huh, you learn something new every day. Azazel chirped with interest. He was loving the exposition. Please, tell him more. And he's lost himself in his curiosity, remarked Rainier. She had to question how this man was capable of leading an entire race for several millennia. Even if their continued survival spoke for itself. It was just hard to reconcile the ideal of Azazel with the teacher sitting next to her. She sighed, hoping she adopted none of his strange quirks. Poor Rainier, she already has several of her own quirks. He's hopeless. Just forget about him, said Valley. The younger Fallen couldn't help but agree with him. That's surprising to hear, commented Michael. I wonder what Metatron's opinion of this would be. Oh, he does have a fascination with ninja history and culture. Gabriel chuckled and thought of her fellow seraph. She remembered her brother's interest arose when Christianity was introduced to Japan by the Jesuit, Xavier. It came out of nowhere, it was just so random. Isn't he in Japan at the moment visiting a fellow enthusiast? I believe so. Oh, I wonder if he'll meet Naruto? That would be interesting. Did you hear that Zenobia? Irina enthusiastically asked of her fellow exorcist. Metatron-sama is in Japan. Maybe we could seek him out after our mission is over? The blue-haired swords maiden did not even hesitate. We definitely should. Irina grinned at her friend's compliance. The fact that Kakashi-sensei's assassination ninjutsu was a lightning attack that was as plain as Naruto's orange clothing should be more than enough evidence of that. I feel like I lost some dignity, Kakashi deadpanned. His fellow ninja snickered as Sakura slyly spoke. Well, you don't really make an effort to maintain it, sensei. I thought one was supposed to lose their bratty tendencies when they matured. I can say the same to you, sensei. Kakashi gave up, there was just no winning. Well, at least you know the art of verbal warfare. I guess I did do something right. The pink-haired medic smiled widely. But more importantly, why does any of this matter? Well, that's because Naruto really didn't want to gather attention to himself. Yuki felt a bit guilty. It was partially her fault the blonde ninja got involved with the supernatural. Then again, if she didn't approach him, she wouldn't have forged the friendship she had now. He really is thinking his situation through, Shizune said. So, I have to wonder what exactly pushed him onto the supernatural stage. Well, we're bound to find out. Tsunade said before a smirk graced her lips. How about a wager? A meal and a drink says he was exposed unwittingly. I'm in, Kakashi said. Lunch at Ramen Ichiraku says he bullhorns his way into it. I don't think this is appropriate or fair to Naruto-kun, said Shizune with a frown. Her fellow Jonin and Kage only stared at her as if aware of something about her. The meek medic squirmed under the looks until finally relenting. Fine, she huffed. Breakfast and tea says he does it as a favor for a friend. All three nodded before simultaneously agreeing, deal. Ninjutsu would make him stand out like a sore thumb, drawing attention to himself thanks to ninjutsu's destructive capacity, and stuff. That basically meant, no Rasengans or any of their variants were allowed, or even too many clones, since too many copies of one person were bound to draw people's attention. Even while learning more about the world, he only had so many copies roaming the streets, while giving them different looks. Every ninja gave a sly look towards Kiba, who was very aware of it. His face flushed in embarrassment and he grumbled. His friends were a bunch of jerks. Though, he was a bit shocked Hinata was joining in on the fun at his expense. He could only pout. He also had no idea how sensing among the supernatural worked either, so gathering natural energy for Sage Mode would be both time-consuming and eye-catching. Everyone flinched upon hearing Naruto's thoughts of using Senjutsu. It was highly worrying that he would even consider it despite the risk it posed to him. They could only hope that he had mastered it to an extent where he could overcome the malice and taint of the world. And if not, they hoped it had yet to influence him. I wonder, Kuroka thought, an enigmatic smile enhancing her beauty. Can you even handle that power, Foxy? The Nekomata was well aware of the dangers natural energy presented to one's state of mind. The only way to truly master senjutsu was to reach enlightenment, to be at peace with oneself. If Naruto was able to do so, nothing would stop the Nekosho from seducing him. A human capable of using very potent chakra, incredible strength and senjutsu as well as having incredible vitality. Naruto was going to be hers, plain and simple, no ifs, ands or buts. Thus that left Naruto with one thing left: taijutsu. Now, while taijutsu wasn't Naruto's specialty, he wasn't a slouch in it anymore. He could now hold his own against Kakashi-sensei in taijutsu, and he was fast enough to be a match for him as well. So that meant he was at least an A- rank in those categories. It would have do for now. After Naruto was done with his mental checklist, he turned back to Nonaka and answered her. This may be difficult to believe, but I am a human. Though, I don't know who you are or why you are pointing your sword at me. You should know that I don't attack someone unless they threaten someone that I care about. That, or I am attacked myself. He sounds almost like a pacifist, said Saji, a tad bit peeved. He knew the Uzumaki wasn't a bad person, far from it to be honest. He was still annoying though. Naruto? A pacifist? Issei questioned to himself before breaking out into a laugh. He had garnered the attention of his friends and associates, haha. If he's a pacifist, then I'm a celibate. Aren't you a virgin? Shut the fuck up, Issei cried, eyes glistening with unshed tears. He could see it in his heart, a harem filled with blessed, beautiful women. One day, I'll become a man. Saji only shook his head as Asia did her best to comfort her friend. Irina, said Zenobia, your friend is a bit strange. The Japanese exorcist frowned, it must be the devil's influence. At heart though, they both doubted that. He then lifted his chin, defiant. Basically, I won't threaten the normal students here. I give you my word on that, and I never go back on my word. He really values his promises, Serafal commented with a quirked eyebrow. It is an admirable trait, said Graphia with an approving tone. If only more people could have such principles. He called it his nindo, did he not? Venelana remarked. The devil within found the boy to be quite charming so far. With these traits compounded upon his active intervention, she could see why her daughter was crushing on Naruto. The adolescent was bound to become a handsome man as he reached adulthood, and she was certain Rias could see that. Such a dangerous child. Many a maiden will be charmed by him. Yeah, I think it's quite cute. The cosplaying Mao chirped. She wondered if she should come up with something just as defining for her character portrayal of a heroine. It was something to think about. If anything, he seems trustworthy. Trustworthy? Probably, Graphia said. To a devil, words were binding. Pride dictated that a devil would triumph over all in articulation. The reason being to succeed in all their endeavors, the devil's whisper they called it. Honor dictated that a devil fulfills all their contracts as such commitment will prove their worth. To see someone outside their race put such value to their words was quite appealing. Though, he does have a mischievous streak. Oh, I'd like to hear about that later, Venelana said with a smile. To be blunt, the blonde really couldn't back down to her right now. No, he had to show her that he couldn't be bullied around. Then again, he also didn't want to antagonize her either. Well, hopefully he found a decent middle ground. Color me impressed, said Shikamaru. Naruto's actually taking time to think about his position in the long term. I know, right? Ino expressed with wide eyes. It seems his tutelage under Jiraiya-sama was for the best. He really has matured over the years. Quote, I didn't think he was capable of such a mindset, to be honest, the Nara yawned before casually placing his hands behind his head. He's always been the kind of guy that was about the here and now and in the moment. I could see why you would think that, remarked Sakura. She brushed a few bangs of hair aside before smiling. As skilled as Naruto has become at combat and tactics, it doesn't really translate to activities outside of a fight. The three let loose a few chuckles before quieting down. Meanwhile, the human female continued to stare at the blonde, pondering his words. Was he really a human? No, that couldn't be true, right? Humans didn't contain strange and foreign energy signals. Unless, it was a sacred gear? Sacred gear? Tsunade pursed her lips trying to make sense of the term. It must be something unique to their culture, she thought with a tilt of her head. Shizune, make note of that. I'm certain whatever it is will come up again at some point. I understand, Tsunade-sama. The Hokage wondered what else would she be learning through the eyes of her preferred successor. For over 2 months, you've journeyed through a new world, Naruto. I wonder how you confronted this challenge, and if it has changed you. She frowned in concern before shaking her head. There was no need to stress over it, she would find out soon enough. No, if that was the case then the censor that tipped the higher-ups of her faction would have made note of it. This was new, foreign. That meant that the being in front of her could very much be a new supernatural entity. She isn't wrong. Azazel smiled widely as most of the supernatural group pursed their lips. The Governor-General was technically right. It was at that point that everyone realized that life as they knew it would never be the same again. I see most of you are finally grasping the implications of this. I hope you do as well, brother. Michael said pleasantly. As the fallen angel glanced to the speaker, Azazel would admit to disliking the smile on his blonde brother's face. All this means is meetings and paperwork. And as such, no sacred gear research. Huh? Come again? Michael smiled widely, his perfect teeth shining radiantly. No, seriously Michael. What the hell do you mean no research? The angel's eyes twinkled in mirth. All supernatural factions from all pantheons will need their leaders to guide them in this time of uncertainty. That means, brother, that you will be at the forefront handling all political matters alongside everyone else. That meant he would be too damn busy to do any kind of research including sacred gears and Naruto's home. Is it too late to come back home? Oh, brother Azazel. Gabriel exclaimed happily with a clap of her hands, Father forgives all. Your siblings and the other heavenly hosts will always welcome you back with open arms. But first, you would need to perform penance and pledge celibacy before you come back. Azazel paused as his mind attempted to process all that his sister said. Immediately, he recoiled in distress, to give up the pleasure of flesh. I just can't do that, damn it. This sucks. Maybe I'll get back to you on that later, dear sister. Gabriel only smiled patiently, he felt like such a scumbag right now. His sister having such hopes for him. Dear Father bless her. And if that was the case, then were there more beings like him? Hidden from view to her faction and mostly unknown. An entire world of beings like him, Sona drawled. Look on the bright side, Kaichu. Akeno said with a sly expression. At least, the student council only has Foxy-kun to worry about. That isn't funny. I beg to differ, Sona. Rias chuckled alongside her, Queen. A dangerous possibility. But more than that, did the human known as Uzumaki Naruto pose a threat to the humans in the area? Nonaka's thoughts raced around this person's strange energy and its possible implications. As was her duty in this academy. The hero tribe sent her to this academy as a watcher, which gave her 2 important responsibilities, to watch over the confirmed devils in the area while keeping a lookout for stray devils, and eliminating them if required. Did you hear that? Tenten asked in surprise. It seems like you were right, Sakura. There are devils in that world. I wonder how they look like. Ino trailed off in thought. I bet they look like the stereotypical super ugly, horned creeps. Kiba said with a chuckle, or the handsome and beautiful ones that can seduce anyone out of their pants. I hope it's the latter. Ino giggled with a blush. I do, too. The Inuzuka agreed with the blonde, his expression perverted by his imagination. Hinata as well as the Jonin of the group all eyed the supernatural group. More specifically, the ones who had yet to be racially identified. Though, the former couldn't help but feel nervous upon seeing some of the girls within the group. They were simply beautiful. The Hyuga was aware of her own beauty, yet those girls just somehow bothered her. Oh, wait a moment. She knew why. It was because of how familiar they referred to Naruto. The admiration some held when speaking of him was obvious. It was unsettling. Ironically, those were feelings Sakura empathized with. Those high school girls were dangerous. As was her duty as a hero. I know we are well past it at this point in our lives. Rias started with a mirthless expression. But I'd like it to be known on record that I wholeheartedly disapprove of your mission. I as well, Sona added neutrally. It did not need to be said which objective in Yuki's mission they took offense with, and the heroine for her part appeared a tad bit contrite. However, orders were just that and she was loyal to her tribe. In the end, it was in the past and they could only move forward from here. "Oh, Ria-tan," Sirzex called out. Curiosity was lacing his voice. "Did you actually think you were in any danger? There's no way Serafal and I would leave any immediate threat near you. Are you saying you were aware about Yuki-san's presence, Onisama?" Rias alongside Sona and their respective peerages were surprised. "Well, of course we did, Rias-chan," Leviathan chimed in with an easy smile. The surprise on both heiresses was completely ignored. Taju Jin is a high-profile individual within the supernatural. Those with clear connections to him have already been identified. "Then why didn't you notify us, Onisama?" Sona demanded. She was clearly disgruntled. "Simply because it would have disrupted your daily lives over something trivial. The situation had been monitored since Yuki-chan's enrollment over a year ago," Serafal said. It was moments like these that reminded Sona of her elder sister's abilities and qualities. The elder woman was elected as Mao for a reason. No lines were crossed and no offenses were made. It was just best to leave it alone and allow all three of you to focus on your education without a sense of paranoia distracting you. Rias, Sona and Yuki all blinked in surprise. Though, the latter was a bit unnerved at hearing such a thing. "There's no reason to fret, Rias, Sona," Sirzex assured with a smile. "We had faith in both of you to lead responsible lives that wouldn't disrupt the human community of Kuo. After all, it's an elder sibling's duty to teach and guide the younger sibling and we've both taught you compassion. All in all, we knew nothing would come of it." He finished as both younger siblings blushed. The heiresses wouldn't admit it, but they appreciated the faith the Mao had in them. And they took pride in that, their small smiles quite telling. "So, I had already partially failed my mission?" Yuki questioned with a bit of hesitance. "Don't worry about it, Yuki-kun," Jin said calmly as if to reassure her of any kind of doubt. "That's just the nature of the beast. Sometimes, presence alone is an effective tactic and deterrent." "I understand, Otou-sama." At the other side of the terrace, both Kakashi and Tsunade felt their respect for the leaders of the supernatural group rise. That being said, she has recently received 2 more objectives by her faction's leadership. To find and determine whether the new foreign energy that a sensor of theirs has picked up near Kuo town was hostile to humanity or not, and to keep an eye out for the last descendant of the original Lucifer. So, these supernatural factions were already aware of Naruto's appearance in their world. Kakashi hummed and thought. He wondered if it was because of his students' liberal use of clones to settle himself in Kuo. He didn't fault Naruto as that was the purpose of the jutsu, a reconnaissance tool, and he was conscious of being discreet. Luck just wasn't on the boy's side. "With that kid's luck something was bound to happen," Tsunade said softly. The concern was evident as he nodded in agreement. Upon hearing Yuki's objective, both Maria and Mio flinched. The latter only now realized that this story would put her at risk and she was unsure how to proceed. "Maria," she whispered to her friend. "I'm aware, Mio-sama." The succubus returned just as softly. "If anything, just be prepared." The daughter of the ousted Lucifer simply nodded. She couldn't afford to be irresolute at the moment. Welding steel into her spine, she promised herself that if anything occurred, she and Maria would both escape safely to at least see Naruto. Even if it was the last. The thought made Mio's heart ache, just one last time. Wow, I wasn't aware of such a thing. The thought that such a controversial individual was possibly residing within Rias and Sona's shared territory was highly distressing. Their faces were mired in a grimace from just the thought of it. So many problems could arise if it ended up true. False claims of the heiresses harboring a fugitive, both of them being influenced or even radicalized as threats to their government, and the possibility that said descendant could pose a threat to them was highly likely. Why the hell was this happening to them? Neither was I. Sona exhaled roughly. Just what is it about this school year that's attracting all of these irregularities? What do you mean, Kaichu? Tsubaki asked in concern. Rias and Akeno listened in as well. Well, we befriend a boy from an undiscovered world, she started, tallying with a finger. A rogue cell of fallen angels trespassed into our territory with possible hostile intentions. The current wielder of the boosted gear has surfaced and we know what that entails. Rias pursed her lips, honestly troubled over the implication. The grand rivalry between the two heavenly dragons was known to all. That would put everyone she held dear at risk. Sona continued, Ria's peerage was attacked at her mountain retreat. A place borderline impossible to infiltrate, that soured the redhead's mood, a frown marring the Gremory's beautiful features. The incident with Riser during the party. There's something completely off about what transpired there. Next, apparently, Lucifer's descendant is lurking around Kuo. When you put it like that, I can understand your worry. Ria said, but, aren't you thinking too deeply about this? Sona let loose a forced laugh. I'm not finished, Rias. She paused for a moment before speaking again. Naruto-san and his group were involved in some kind of conflict with the yokai in Kyoto. She adjusted her glasses before narrowing her eyes. Obviously, none of these are connected, but there's been far too many incidents to just ignore. Something is happening within the supernatural, and the fact that we're here only leads me to believe so. The group of friends took a moment to digest what Sona said. They came to realize that they've really been busy these past few months. We've been granted an opportunity to see our possible future, and we've been shown an era-defining revelation in regards to Uzumaki-san. Tsubaki spoke after gathering her thoughts. Sona Kaichu, do you believe we are being warned, or at least something is being brought to our awareness? Oh, most definitely. It was highly unnerving to think about. Sona shook her head. There was no doubt in her mind her sister and the other present leaders had similar thoughts as her. Let's continue with the show. The hero tribe's duty must be fulfilled for the sake of humanity, which it has safeguarded for 2,000 years as the best line of defense against the supernatural. The organization was said to have been founded by the God of the Bible and has since spread across the world to continue their mission in secrecy. None of the supernatural factions were aware of their presence, but they were aware of the heroes that they created throughout history. Jin-san, Tsunade called out as she glanced towards the man. Is this hero tribe the organization you represent? Yes, I'm one of its elders. She gave a nod in gratitude as Shizune started taking notes on her order. They were where humans with sacred gears were supposed to go if they wanted to fight instead of live normal lives. Things have changed, however. The introduction of the Devil's Evil Peace system has made recruiting new blood difficult, as many devils have snatched up any human with talent or a sacred gear like collectibles. The hero tribe, thus, had to keep better vigilance over the devils and the other supernatural factions to prevent their fellow humans from being reincarnated into what they saw as a slavery system. There was tension in the air upon hearing such, and the Konoha group were alarmed over what they heard. Well now, Azazel chimed in with a wry smile. Talk about awkward, huh? Now isn't the time for your jokes, brother. Gabriel whispered uncomfortably. Azazel sighed. Look, you can't fault the devils for doing what was necessary for the survival of their species. I won't deny that at times it can be a slavery system. It's not perfect, and crimes can be easily committed within the system, but every sentient creature is guilty of that. With power comes the temptation of abuse, and abuse is a universal concept. It is, unfortunately, bound to happen. He concluded as the others listened in. They couldn't help but agree with him, and the devils present appreciated his understanding. Azazel-san, what do they mean by reincarnation? Tsunade asked with grim interest. Exactly that, he replied. Through their arcane rituals, devils have established a way to physiologically alter most creatures into devils. Tsunade would admit to being impressed, but why would they need to do that? Thanks to their incredible longevity, nature has decreed them to have a low breeding rate, and war has dwindled their numbers to near extinction. Even now, they are endangered. The Konoha group widened their eyes upon that bombshell. They understood now what the purpose of Evil Peace system was truly for. It was ingenious, but the system obviously had its flaws. I see you understand. Devils have successfully rebuilt and their population is resurging. Azazel grinned widely. It's actually quite impressive. Excuse me, just what kind of war would lead to the near extinction of an entire race? Shizune asked with morbid curiosity in her tone. Oh, a war that spanned over 2 millennia. The jaws of the shinobi dropped in disbelief as silence reigned after Azazel's answer. A few beats passed until Kiba disturbed the silence. How old are you? Really old. I don't really remember. About 3,000 years, at least. Bullshit, old man. Don't call me old if you're calling me a liar, punk. You still look like an old man with that fail hair dye, Gramps. Valley couldn't help but laugh at that insult while Rainier attempted to contain her giggles. My hair is natural, you little punk. Enough, please brother. Gabriel pleaded, not wanting any conflict to break out. She turned to the young Inuzuka, please forgive him. He can be a bit unruly at times. Kiba smiled at the angel. Gods, she was beautiful and he would willingly submit to the pretty, anything for you. His friends only looked upon him with disappointed expressions. How transparent of him. Azazel looked on in disbelief, petty rage entering his heart as his sister mediated with the disrespectful kid, this fucking brat. I have a question. Shizune said hesitantly, hoping the tension dissolved. I'll do my best to answer, Michael said with genial smile towards the medic. Oh, he is so handsome. That smile should be illegal. She thought, a blush highlighting her features. It said earlier that there was a god. Is that true? Yes. His answer floored the shinobi into complete silence. Now, spiritualism was very much prominent within the elemental nations, but to shinobi only one deity was truly acknowledged and that was the Shinigami. The Rikudo Sennin was a legend, borderline myth, however, if he was real, then he was simply a man who taught humanity the secrets of chakra. The sage was deified upon his passing, but he, or she, was human nonetheless. If only they really knew. But to hear that there was another acknowledged god was astounding. The shinobi really couldn't dispute it either as it was another world. A world with its own cultures and customs, its own beliefs. They had to keep an open mind. In our world, Michael spoke after a few beats of silence. There are multiple gods from different pantheons. Each pantheon began anchored to a certain ethnic group of humanity in the ancient past. Upon development and expansion of human society, alongside wars of conquest and faith there was cultural diffusion due to transcultural concepts. Though, there are creatures exclusive to the supernatural apart from all religions and… Wait, Azazel interrupted, Michael, you're going off on a tangent here and we still have to watch this. The male seraph blinked before smiling bashfully, oh, forgive me. The shinobi were just coming to grips with the information presented to them, Sakura groaned. Multiple gods and pantheons. The supernatural just sounds like a giant headache. Tell me about it. It's like being thrown into the rapids without knowing how to swim or water walk. Ino shook her head, her blonde hair swishing about. And Naruto got involved in that, poor guy. I hope he manages well, Hinata whispered in concern. Have some faith, Kakashi said as he readjusted himself upon his seat. He is a Konoha shinobi. It was all they could really do at the moment. A sentiment that Nonaka nominally agreed with. Now, with this strange power in this ostensible human, there was another point of concern to the heroes of this world, one that, given their already difficult circumstances, they couldn't let pass. Which was why the young woman continued her intense stare, finally moving her sword away from his face after a few more tense moments. A green aura appearing on her arm once more, which took her armor and sword away from her. I will trust your word for now, Uzumaki-san. But if you give me a reason to doubt your sincerity, then I, Nonaka Yuki of the hero tribe will end you. Nonaka Yuki stated with utmost certainty. This is interesting. I guess both you and Foxy-kun really had a rocky start, Akeno said with a smile. She wondered if she would be able to see their confrontation. The thought honestly excited her. She could still remember the spar she engaged Naruto in and how he thoroughly dominated her in it. The nerves of her spine flared as she inhaled a quick breath, a heat washing over her entire form until it settled on her cheeks. Would he be willing to bind her again? We had a misunderstanding at first, Yuki responded with a nod. But it's been resolved as you all know. Yes, but what exactly forced your confrontation that night? Yuki hesitated, unsure if she should answer Akino's question. It wasn't the fact that she didn't trust her senior, but she was aware that Naruto and Mio had yet to divulge the truth of the latter's heritage. The heroine didn't wish to be the one to sabotage the efforts her friend had taken to keep it concealed. She was under orders, Jin answered when he noticed his daughter's uncertainty. He wondered what that was about. Oh, I see, Akeno said, dropping the topic immediately. After all, she was well trained, and she was sure that she could deal with whatever this boy could throw at her. Her warning to him was not really for her own benefit either, but more for the ordinary humans around them. For the sake of humanity. That was the duty of a hero after all. How admirable, Neji commented before pausing in his observation. The girl on the screen bothered him, however. She presented herself far too rigid and appeared stern in her beliefs. It almost reminded him of. He pursed his lips in realization. Oh, gods damn this. Really now, Neji? Is everything alright, my eternal rival? You're not constipated, are you? Lee asked in concern. The vein on his brow pulsed angrily and he almost reflexively activated his Byakugan. Calm down, Neji. What was that ancient Hyuga technique? Ah, yes. Breathe in, breathe out. Again. Once more. Goosefraba. This shit doesn't work. Yes, I still want to use Jukin on this dumbass. The Hyuga turned his sight upon his teammate, his stoicism putting a statue to shame. He observed the green anomaly before him, the taijutsu enthusiast smiling in obvious concern, and he realized that yes, he wouldn't mind a spar right now. He's doing it on purpose, he has to be. Lee isn't stupid. He's a ninja for heaven's sake. Social quirks notwithstanding, Lee had to understand tact. Perhaps he was giving him too much credit? No, Lee. Nothing of the sort. Ah, I see. Then perhaps it's just gas? His fists clenched tightly as his chakra began to hum and flow. He could feel it streaming towards his eyes and he welcomed it. However, it ceased as he felt a hand upon his own. Lee, you're being a tad bit rude. Ah, I'm sorry Tenten. I was simply concerned. I cannot fathom Neji, my youthful rival, being indisposed by something so unsightly. Then why bring it up, Lee? Tenten smiled in exasperation. What's troubling you, Neji? Ah, Tenten. My sanctuary within the madness of Maida Guy and Rock Lee. Please, grant me refuge. Neji shook his head before speaking. It's just Nonaka-san reminds of something best left forgotten. And what is that, exactly? He grimaced before answering, of my beliefs and disposition before my fight with Naruto. Tenten blinked before she gasped. Oh, Tilda? I think I see why you would think that. She took a moment to think it over before smiling. I heard talk from the other group saying they confronted each other and I can totally see Naruto doing that. Neji offered a rueful smile. Yeah, he definitely would. His expression tightened, the air around him serious. I wish to speak with her. She blinked once again in surprise before smiling softly. I understand. I'll be there with you. He returned it, an act that made her heart beat faster. Thank you. Naruto could have cried in relief, happy that he didn't have to show his hand in a school filled with supernatural beings. He could go back home and regroup from this unexpected wake-up call. Understood, Nonaka-san. I promise you that I won't cause any trouble here. In fact, I was forced into Kuo because a police officer said I was too young to be working. So I'm not here of my own free will, ya know? Naruto stated, in the hopes that she would see that he had no ulterior motives. Nonaka didn't bother to respond as she turned around to leave the rooftop, heading towards her next class since school was still ongoing. She just needed to make sure that Uzumaki wasn't a threat before he could be allowed to leave the premises. Moreover, how stupid did she take her for? There wasn't any kind of law in Japan that dictated that teenagers had to go to high school. Wait, what? Kiba questioned unsurely. Are you saying he was duped by law enforcement? Troublesome, he was played on his ignorance of their society. Shikamaru sighed. It was pure luck that his ignorance was a factor for their machination's success, but kudos to whoever did it. He turned his sight upon Jin, his fellow shinobi doing the same. The ancient human only smiled as he waved at them. It was obvious it was him. Yuki had received an order to identify Naruto and his intentions, and the man was the organization's leader. Poor Naruto. Either he was lying or he was tricked. The latter, almost everyone chorused. Though, she was pretty confident that he was lying. I'm sorry, Yuki breathed out loud. She was apologizing to no one, but she was hoping that people understood that she did feel guilty for doubting her friend. Oni-chan, Kurumi spoke in concern. You said it yourself. He's your friend, right? The elder heroine blinked before nodding uncertainly. Then, don't worry about it. I'm sure he understands better than anyone why you did what you did. And that's all that matters, his opinion on your actions. Yuki opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Her little sister smiled at her, a gesture which eased her mind. Thank you, Kurumi. Always, Oni-chan. Meanwhile, as the blonde watched the young woman leave, he couldn't help but believe that he seriously needed to get back to his house in order to figure out how to approach this new problem. Apparently there were also strong humans among the other strange creatures that inhabited this world, giving him more to worry about. He just couldn't catch a break here, could he? He really can't, Yasaka spoke softly. It's pitiable. I wish to comfort him. Every young maiden with a vested interest in Naruto froze in alarm. Their instincts were screaming at them to act territorial as well as cautious of the beautiful Kitsune. "What do you mean exactly, Yasaka-sama?" Yuki asked of her host back in Kyoto. It was to every girl's benefit that someone had the sense and audacity to ask. The Kitsune offered an enigmatic smile that raised their hackles, simultaneously appearing condescending to their insecure minds. Exactly that. All the girls only had one thought come to mind: dangerous. "I think Naruto needs a hug, Okawa-sama," Kuno suggested as her ears pricked forward and tails rose in determination. "You're right, Kuno," she smiled, eyes glistening with mirth. "A hug is exactly what he needs." She couldn't help but laugh out loud, the sound reminiscent of wind chimes, soft and musical. "She's extremely dangerous," the maidens thought simultaneously. Tsunade was a tad bit alarmed, but she ceased that train of thought immediately. "Nope, that's not any of my business." The worst part was that, if this girl knew about him, then it was possible that other groups knew about him too. The blonde quickly left the rooftop in order to leave the academy and get back home, where he wouldn't feel like everyone was waiting for him to blow his cover. It was suffocating for someone like him to constantly be aware, forced to be on edge all of the damn time, and keep himself from standing out too much. Most of the audience grimaced upon hearing that. It made Naruto's situation sound as if he was living like a fugitive, a most perilous and undesired life. They truly sympathized with the boy's plight. "I wonder," Rias began softly. "Did his becoming friends ease his mind even a little?" "I hope so, Rias." Akano responded just as softly, a frown marring her features. "Someone as kind and honorable as him deserves peace of mind." Lost and alone in an entirely different environment, with no real understanding of the situation or world you found yourself in, the Gremory said, her brow furrowed in anxiety. "I can't imagine the strength of will and character to endure that." Upon hearing the heiress, Mio pondered if her presence in Naruto's life was intrusive. As much as that thought hurt, she couldn't stop from thinking about it. What if he, precious people, like you, Mio? She swallowed hard as her heart fluttered, beating hard enough to overtake the din of the audience. Lost and alone, Rias had said. Naruto. It was here and now that Mio realized that Naruto needed her, just like she needed him. It just wasn't what he was used to. Even if it was necessary, he still didn't like it one bit. "Naruto does seem to be a free spirit," Rainier said in thought as she gazed up at the sky. "It makes me wonder why he chose to be a ninja. I mean, it's their equivalent to a military, right? That kind of obligation doesn't seem to suit him." Tsunade flinched upon hearing the girl's opinion. She was aware that Naruto didn't truly represent the archetypical ninja. While she found it refreshing, a very cynical part of her understood that Naruto never truly had a choice for his future. His fate was truly set upon his birth, and there was no chance the Konoha administration would let their Jinchuriki live as a civilian. The fact the blonde boy desired to be a ninja was a tad bit tragic. Naruto grew up as an ostracized orphan. There was no one to truly raise and guide him, to inspire other interests within him. The job and duty of a shinobi wasn't just a simple career, it was a way of life. And for a pubescent boy coming out of his toddler years to wish to become a ninja, it stunk of manipulation. The Hokage sighed softly through her nose. At times, when she dove deep into a bottle, Tsunade wondered why Minato had condemned his and Kushina's child. "Perhaps the path of a warrior calls to him," Valley opined with a shrug. "If it does, I can certainly respect that." Azazel sighed. "Of course you can. Valley, haven't you considered just living a comfortable life? Such as going to school, finding a girlfriend, starting a business and family. You know, the works?" The Hakuryuko scoffed. "HMPH, Azazel. Even if I'd be interested in such pursuits and be inclined to attempt so, do you honestly think life would let me?" The governor of Grigori pursed his lips in silence. He couldn't confidently say that the young man had a chance at a normal life. Being the descendant of Lucifer as well as the host of Divine Dividing, Valley's future was mired with problems. It was why he took the boy under his wings, to prepare him. "Your silence is telling. If I'd even have a chance, it would only be with the defeat of them." Azazel knew who the hybrid was speaking about. Though, he was pretty sure the boy had nothing to worry about in regards to Hyodo Issei. The other person, however, Rizavum, was a threat to everyone. He, very simply, needed to wind down a bit in a place that he could feel like himself without being constantly watched. Hopefully this would be the last incident with this world's supernatural that he would have for a while. Definitely unlikely, Ophis said dispassionately. Oh, I'm surprised you have some input to give, Azazel said with a stretch of his arms. He gave a sidelong glance to the dragon. I thought you lost all interest in this. I've been granted an opportunity to understand Naruto from a better perspective. Most of the audience blinked upon hearing her statement. A feeling of foreboding ceased their breathing upon the analysis of her words, the implication. You all identified and approached him out of your own curiosity. Do you honestly believe I wouldn't do the same? You met Naruto? Rias weakly asked, the trepidation in her voice obvious to all. Not yet, but I will, was clearly left unsaid. That was disconcerting to Naruto's comrades. What is your interest in him? Everyone was surprised upon hearing Medaka speak. She had been quiet since their departure from the courtyard into the palace. The girl socialized with no one and her demeanor rendered her unapproachable. And yet, in regards to the blonde boy in focus, she would be inclined to interact with others. I am simply interested in the strong. Ophis turned her gaze to Medaka. The physically mature girl met her gaze unflinchingly, much to the goddess' approval and interest. This human was one to be observed. And why would that be? It was a question most desired to be answered. However, Ophis appeared to have a dry and ironic sense of humor as she smiled. It was small and soft, which was surprising. Now that would be telling. Did she just attempt a joke? The thought flared within everyone's mind. Medaka pursed her lips. She wasn't a fool, more than aware that demanding anything from the Ouroboros was a death sentence. Though, she would admit to be experiencing a weird feeling at the moment, she just couldn't identify it. Oh well, she would just have to desist from her attempt at interrogation. I see. A lull of silence fell before the audience. Their thoughts clouded with suspicion over the dragon's agenda. It was interrupted much to everyone's hidden relief. Well, despite that bombshell of a revelation, Azazel stated with a forced smile. How about we continue? Yes, that would be best, everyone thought. Naruto quickly jogged at an average, human pace towards the front of the academy, getting ready to leave, up until he muttered a curse under his breath. Unfortunately for him, he ran headfirst from one problem into another, this time in the form of one of those strange beings that he still didn't really know about, yet. The girl in front of him was a teenager with black hair that has been shortened and shaped to a bob-cut style, with piercing violet eyes that were framed by a pair of glasses focusing on him as he approached. She wore the typical Kuo Academy female uniform and had a petite figure, usually befitting one of her age. She went by the name of Shitori Sona, the student council president of this academy, and quite possibly a supernatural being that he wanted absolutely nothing to do with. Funny how that worked out, Tenten said with a wry smile. Do you truly believe they're friends? Kiba asked in doubt. Naruto-kun always makes an effort to establish a bond of sorts with others, Hinata answered with confidence. Even if he attempted to avoid these people, if they had to interact he would subconsciously endear himself to them. It's in his nature to be empathetic. She believed that wholeheartedly. Hinata. Sakura gave a sidelong glance at the former Hyuga heiress as she overheard her. A part of her was envious that Hinata could speak with such confidence about her romantic interest, an act she couldn't indulge in. And it was made worse when the medic Nin couldn't disagree. She sighed as she gazed back to the screen. All the while doubts surfaced to mind about her choices in life. Uzumaki Naruto, the transfer student. Sona stated matter-of-factly, giving Naruto a sudden chill from her tone. It was the tone he was somewhat familiar with now, the tone of an upcoming lecture. All of Naruto's friends, the younger generation, smiled in amusement. But before Naruto could make an attempt to escape, the student council president continued. The transfer student that should be in class in order to continue his education, rather than roaming around the school, skipping class, and sleeping during lectures. Shikamaru, that girl. Kiba whispered in trepidation. I know. Thank gods we don't have to deal with someone so troublesome, whispered the Nara in slight fear. Both young men chanced a glance to Sona at the opposite end of their seating. As beautiful as she was, the president was quite intimidating. Iruka would appreciate her dedication and diligence. By this point, Sona's glasses took in the reflection of light, which gave her a natural glare without having to make the expression for it. He had to admit, that was pretty cool. TCH, Sona uncharacteristically clicked her tongue. It's meant to corral them into acquiescence. Honestly, Naruto had a talent for grinding her gears. While she was flattered he appreciated her subtle trick, it bothered her that he could just ignore its effect. Are you alright, Sona-chan? There will be a day when he frustrates you just as well, Akeno. And I'll be there to savor it. My, I wasn't aware you had an interest in voyeurism. Akeno, Sona, Tsubaki and Rias exclaimed as they flushed scarlet from the thoughts that surfaced upon that statement. All the while the hybrid laughed musically, it was far too fun teasing her friends. Is everything alright, Sotan? Yes, Oni-sama, nothing is wrong here. The Leviathan shrugged as she turned back to the screen. As much as she loved her younger sister, she couldn't deny that Sona was a little weird at times. Pot meet kettle. Listen, I had a good reason for it. Naruto began, before getting cut off by Sona again. I'm sure you have your reasons, Uzumaki-san, but attaining an education is your most important goal right now. It is what you should be focusing on so that you could become a good and prosperous citizen. This is for your future. Sona claimed with conviction. Wow, those are leadership qualities present within her, Tsunade whistled. She was highly impressed with the girl's posture and speech. Thank you for your kind words, Tsunade-sama. Sona-san, I believe? The Hokage was granted a nod at her question. You may be young, but you hold yourself with aristocratic discipline. Are you a noblewoman? I am the heiress of the Sea-Tree clan. I see. Are there any other heirs and heiresses present within your group? I do not desire for my subordinates to remain ignorant and cause an offense. Tsunade had her attention directed to the beautiful red-haired girl sitting beside Sona. For a moment, she felt a brief pang of sadness, the hair color reminding her of her grandmother, Mito, as well as Kushina. The last time she had seen Naruto's mother was before she left the village, only a few years before the Third World War. They weren't close, merely acquaintances from the Uzumaki's visits with her grandmother. Her grief over Dan's death hampered her ability to bond with anyone. However, those what-ifs always came to mind and Kushina was featured in more than a few. I am Rias Gremory, heiress of the Gremory clan. Thank you, the Hokage nodded in gratitude. She hoped her ninja would remember proper decorum. Last thing she needed was to make enemies with strangers she was forced to make bedfellows, for the lack of a better term. Naruto was momentarily stunned at the complete faith that she held in her statement, thrown off by it a bit. Admittedly, he wasn't sure what he should expect from these so-called supernatural beings. Were they just like humans, where some were good and some were bad? Or maybe they all fell into some sort of personality category? But so far, if he used her as a benchmark, maybe they all weren't so different from humans at all? He hoped so, that way, if push came to shove, then he could possibly reach an agreement with some of these people so that he didn't become their target. At least, that was a possible plan for the future. Rias laughed, wondering when exactly Naruto conjured the thought of establishing the Kuo Pact. Funny how things ended up. Thank you for your concern, Shidori-san. But I have to take care of my younger sister at home. So I had to leave school early. Naruto lied through his teeth. The Kuo Pact as well as the shinobi all chanced to glance at Mio, whose expression was twitching at the moment. The Scion of Lucifer gave voice to her thoughts, disbelief coloring her tone. Are you telling me his whole sister claim was born out of coincidence? Oh Mio-sama, I thought you enjoyed role-playing as his sister. All present with dirty minds blushed upon hearing that. Honestly, it was practically everyone except Office and Madaka. It was difficult to discern in regards to Kakashi, however. Don't make it sound so weird, Maria. The succubus only giggled, forgive me. He was never a good liar to begin with, but this one was so bad that even he had to admit it. Well, maybe he can just have a clone henge into Naruto or something, in case suspicions arose later. What the hell is a Naruto? Mio asked in alarm. The name was incredibly disconcerting. So defensive, Mio-sama. Maria's smile widened in genuine amusement. Do you feel threatened? Maria, please. Even you should be a bit wary of this. He's saying he can shapeshift into a girl. I don't know. It's kind of exciting, seems incredibly daring and kinky. Once again, the perverts present flushed scarlet, though most of the males were a tad bit creeped out. Akeno, however, took a moment to actually imagine such a scenario. Are you sure, Akeno? Of course. Don't you trust your senpai, Foxy-kun? It's not really a matter of trust. A crack of a whip rang out through the clubroom. Enough, Naruto. Transform. Now. A puff of smoke encompassed his form, the curves of a silhouette unmistakably feminine and generous appearing within. Akano licked her lips sensually. Well, hello Tilda Vixen, she thought. A vulnerable, nude and whiskered blonde appeared as the smoke dissipated. Akano approached her partner for the night with a ball gag in hand. Off to the side, a red-haired heiress, bound and gagged, could only struggle to escape, wishing to save her friend before it was too late. We are going to have so much fun, Naruto. The dominant breathily whispered. The blonde submissive could only whimper, the shit I do for friends. Oh my. The young fallen ceased that brief fantasy despite the heat that plagued her entire body. She exhaled raggedly, her hands held over her racing heart and did her best to collect herself. With a brief sigh, she expelled all perverse thoughts. Maybe one day, she told herself. And she didn't necessarily need to be the dom. Her cheeks were burning, now. A girl could dream. Maria, don't you know any shame? It was a question every woman present was wondering as well. Unfortunately, the succubus only laughed heartily, much to their dismay. The president raised an eyebrow before a small smile grew on her face. Very well, Uzumaki-san, but keep up with your studies from here on out. Sona, apparently, approved of his actions, if her more supportive attitude was of any indication. To her, it was good that he wanted to go home and take care of a sibling, so she didn't want to stop him, but she also didn't want to encourage his lax behavior in regards to his studies. She, perhaps, had a soft spot for elder siblings, who rushed to take care of their younger siblings. Now, if only her own elder sister wasn't so embarrassing, then maybe. So Tan, everything I do is for the sake of our love. Oni-sama, please be conscious of the words you speak. People could misinterpret them. I understand tact and you shouldn't worry about what other people think. Any expression of love towards you is simply that. My genuine love for you, so Tan. Again, Yune. Sona exhaustedly exhaled as her hand combed her hair. She couldn't keep doing this, I give up. The Mao only smiled at her little sister. As long as she understood, then everything was perfectly fine. Rias and Mio sympathized with their fellow devil. Elder siblings were difficult. The Konoha shinobi just quietly observed in surprise. That was quite the sister complex the woman had. Kiba was grateful his own sister didn't act like that. Kurumi, Yuki began with a bit of trepidation. Am I a difficult elder sister? She really wasn't, but Kurumi wanted to mess with her. A simple harmless prank. As such, she avoided Yuki's gaze and adopted a reticent appearance. Jin, catching on to his youngest's game, couldn't help but snicker quietly. I'm sorry. Thank you, Shidori-san. I'll see y'all later, alright? Naruto said loudly, desperate to make sure that he wouldn't be caught lying by getting out of there as soon as possible. He once more began to run at what he considered to be an average human speed, but what he considered average actually appeared to Sona as speeds that only the fastest human runner in the world, Usain Bolt, could achieve. Well, I know it doesn't matter now with our awareness of his abilities and skills, Rias said. But, I can see why your interest was piqued back then. Yes, Sona said, before adopting a contemplative expression. However, now that I think about it, I don't think we would have been strong enough to reincarnate him without a mutation piece or at least most of our pawns. My peerage is nearly full to capacity, so I wouldn't have been able to spare the necessary pieces no matter how much I may have desired his service. I do wonder how many pieces would be required for him, Rias thought out loud. Witnessing his last fight before his displacement, it's clear Naruto is incredibly powerful. I do believe it may equal Issei's reincarnation. Did he not take your entire pawn set? A nod was the sea tree's answer. Excuse me, Kakashi interjected, garnering the supernatural group's attention. Forgive me for intruding, but you are speaking about my student. In regards to this whole reincarnation business, did he accept your offer? The copy nin, if he was honest, would be disappointed if his student did choose to forsake his humanity. Especially after all the work Naruto put into gaining his home's acknowledgement of his worth and humanity. He wouldn't lash out at either party, though. That was just incredibly petty, it was their life and prerogative. He just hoped his student would be prepared to confront the consequences of his choices. Konoha wouldn't let go of its Jinchuriki. No, he did not. Rias answered with obvious disappointment. Kakashi wondered what that was about as he and his fellow shinobi breathed out in relief. If you both deal with reincarnation. Hinata paused as to assure herself of her hypothesis. Does that mean you both are devils? Rias and Sona smiled at Hinata, the expressions confirming the answer for the shinobi. That also meant Searzex and Seraphal were also devils by extension. Well, that was surprising. And Kiba was honestly thrilled. Sona was, of course, shocked to see an ordinary teenage boy run so fast. Either the boy was a naturally gifted runner or perhaps he was something exceptional among his fellow humans. Regardless, that burst of impressive talent got her to ponder whether he could be a potential candidate for her peerage, as she had quite a few openings left to fill. She decided to look into the matter later, but first, she had to have a conversation with her best friend, Rias, about potential candidates for their peerages, and how best to divide the spoils between them. Fair was fair after all. Looks like Kuo Academy truly is a place where potential congregates, right, Tsubaki? Sona asked, at first to what seemed like no one in particular. Though it turned out not to be the case, as one of her closest friends, her queen, Shinra Tsubaki, appeared to the right side of the bespectacled girl without prompt. Tsubaki was a well-endowed young woman with straight black hair that reached her knees, along with heterochromic eyes with her left eye and right eye being violet and light brown respectively. Her own glasses glinted in the light mysteriously as she regarded her king and responded. Yes, Uzumaki Naruto would indeed be an excellent addition to your peerage, Sona Kaichu. He seems to be a better prospect than Hyodo Issei at the very least. Ouch, my pride. Apologies, Hyodo-san, Tsubaki said uniformly. It was difficult to tell if she was being sincere. If it is any consolation, I believe the boy who stands with us now is someone worthy of joining my king's peerage. At that, he offered a sheepish grin. Thanks, Tsubaki Fukukaichu. I know I didn't really do myself any favors with my behavior in school. You're still a pervert even now, Saji sniped with a sly expression. Fuck off. Issei grumbled a bit, it's why I'm grateful to Naruto for talking to me. He really changed my life. The Konoha shinobi wondered what the story between those two were. Naruto seems to have been really busy these past few months, Ino concluded in surprise. Yeah, Sakura whispered. Really makes you wonder what else he's done. The student council president narrowed her eyes faintly. Oh yes. The young man that Rias had her eye on, the one with the suspected sacred gear. Neither of them really knew what the boy held within him, and Sona disliked taking chances, especially when she considered that Hyodo already had quite the reputation throughout the school already. It wasn't a good reputation. Which was why, so far, Uzumaki was the better choice for her. If I had the chance, I'd still welcome him into my peerage. Really, Sona? Rias asked in surprise. I thought after all the shenanigans he's put you through, you'd be dissuaded from such. Oh, make no mistake, Rias. A sadistic twinkle illuminated from her eyes. I would curb his misbehavior with proper discipline. That meant she would spank him, hard. She wouldn't admit to actually enjoy such acts, even if the thought of doing so to Naruto kind of excited her. He deserved it. However, he is an ambitious man. Sona said, I can respect that and I believe he could accomplish much with the proper support. Of course, obtaining Naruto's skills and support for her own endeavors and dream would be monumental. They could accomplish much together, she honestly believed that ever since his declaration at the party. The Gremory heiress frowned. The thought of Naruto being charmed into the service of another devil was upsetting. Though, she understood Sona and what was left unsaid. The Sea Tree's dream to open an institution of education for all devils in society was one worth fighting for. And it was a dream Naruto would support. No matter his own opinion on school life. He was just that kind of man, willing to help where he could. But first, come, Tsubaki, we should be on our way, Rias is expecting us. Sona stated, turning around and heading towards the direction of the Occult Research Club building. They had much to discuss. I believe it's safe to say that Naruto-san will find himself on the supernatural stage really soon, Roswise said in pity. She couldn't help but do so since young man appeared to be doing his best to avoid a confrontation with it. Life seldom goes as one plans. Yeah, Azazel replied. It's only a matter of time. Naruto was jogging his way back home, despite his impatience. After the run-in with Nonakayuki, he really didn't want to run the risk of tipping off his abilities to her, lest he incur the girl's suspicion and make a new enemy in the visage of this so-called hero tribe. Also, he had to find a place to train in order to prepare himself for what seemed like a probable conflict. Since he was busy gathering information on the world and the supernatural, he never really registered that he needed to train. What with how noticeable that action would be. It seems stupid as a matter of fact. Why would he ruin his anonymity by training every now and again when he wasn't in any danger? That, and he had no clue where he could find a place to train. You can't really fault him when he has a valid excuse, Shikamaru droned out. It's still an excuse, Kiba stated with certainty. Then let me reword it, a valid defense. The Inuzuka pursed his lips, it was still an excuse in his opinion. So that's why he requested the construction of a training facility, Rias said in surprise. Honestly, Naruto really valued his security and secrecy. Like a ninja, her lips twitched as she tried to suppress her excitement. It was an excellent idea either way. Akeno spoke with a smile, I know I've benefited from it. I believe the entire group has and I'm happy with our progress. We can only improve from here on out. But now, of course, there was at least one faction that knew that he wasn't normal, so he needed to get himself back into shape. Just in case. The only problem that he really had was that he was quite a bit slower, physically and in reaction speed, than when he fought Pain. He was regretting his decision now. That being said, it wasn't like he was weak or anything, he was more than positive that he was stronger and faster than most of these supernatural beings. The entire Gremory peerage sans Issei felt a tad bit depressed. They couldn't dispute that claim. He can't be that strong, Saji said with certainty. He had forgotten the montage of Naruto's fight with Pain as well as the fallen angel, Vridiel. Issei laughed mockingly, he'd curb stomp you, bucket boy. I'd curb stomp. Saji. Sona interrupted, mild disappointment was apparent in her tone. That's enough. The pawn of Cetres slumped in defeat. As much as Saji wanted to one-up his fellow pawn, he didn't want to disappoint his king and president. Cyraorg smiled as he observed one of his designated rivals. The humility apparent in the Sekiryute was a pleasant surprise. That kind of mindset would benefit him in the future as insecurity would only hamper one's growth. However, acknowledgement of your fellows and betters could inspire self-improvement. Competition was the key to an individual's rise to strength and prominence. It was clear that Issei had deemed Naruto as an inspiration and someone to measure himself against. A sentiment the Bael heir shared and personally understood. Naruto had a helluva punch. It was more of a long-term problem than anything else. So, the best thing for him to do would be to find a nice forest near Kuo town, and use Fuinjutsu to hide his energy signal. Fuinjutsu. Fuinjutsu was something that he recently dabbled in, seeing as he had the tools necessary for it, and he practically had nothing better to do with his free time. So, he's actually training his skill in Fuinjutsu, Tsunade commented. There was a semblance of pride in her voice, his ancestors would be proud. Tsunade Shisho, are you aware of his parentage? The Hokage pursed her lips as Sakura asked her that question. She could see her student gazing at her in surprise and suspicion. A part of her was proud that the girl was acting protectively of Naruto. The other part was a bit annoyed for being put on the spot. It was only made worse when the others of Sakura's generation were eyeing her with suspicion. Sakura, Naruto would not bear the Uzumaki surname if he didn't inherit their blood. You know the prestige that comes with a clan name, even if the clan has been scattered to the four winds. Tsunade didn't outright lie to her student, she simply deflected the question with an ambiguous answer. The Uzumaki were a clan? Kiba asked in surprise. Yes, Konoha's flag jackets bear the Uzumaki clan crest in honor of them. Well, damn, I thought that symbol was just there to denote style. Like Asuma-sensei's sash, Shikamaru spoke up to correct his friend. Sensei wore his sash to denote his status as a former guardian. Yeah, but he didn't have to wear it. Plus, it was stylish. Shikamaru and Ino had to agree. Asuma looked like a badass even in standard uniform. It was the facial hair and the cigarettes, and not every Konoha nin wears the standard uniform. Kakashi-sensei being the exception. Are you saying I'm not stylish? The copy nin had to ask. His dignity was taking far more jabs than he allowed. And one hit was already far too many. Well, I don't think you cover your eye as a fashion statement, do you? Kakashi was at a loss for words. It was obviously for the sake of efficiency. I've always wondered about that. Sakura said with a contemplative expression, "Why not just wear an eye patch? Wouldn't it be far more efficient and easier to adjust than your headband?" It was obviously a fashion statement. Kakashi had enough though. "How about we just get back into the story?" The Fuinjutsu scrolls which Ero Sennin gave him for his training, which were left in a seal, always accessible to him, if he wanted it. Never touched while he was back at Konoha, far too concerned with real tangible power and strength than the mysterious art that his master was so advanced in. It must be similar to magic runes, Rossweiss hypothesized in giddiness. Anything related to the mystic arts was something she enthusiastically desired to learn about. And to think there was an entire unidentified culture and its mystic arts out there, waiting to be studied. She nearly squealed in excitement. His perverted old man of a master forced him to keep it as a precaution, hoping that the blonde would, one day, try and do something with it. Naruto laughed it off at the time, but it turned out that the old pervert was a hell of a lot smarter than he gave him credit for. The shinobi twitched, becoming more somber at the thought. But then he shook his head, deciding to exit from that train of thought, knowing nothing good would come from it. First and foremost, he had to focus on finding a place to train. But before he even did that, he needed a nap, as well as a nice feast of ramen to cool his nerves. One could not train on an empty stomach after all. The Konoha group and the Kuo pact sighed. As much as they agreed on the sentiment, they didn't approve his choice of a meal. Ramen was fine, once in a while. Variety was the spice of life. Why couldn't Naruto understand that? We haven't even found all his stashes yet. Mio sighed in exasperation. Really, how many hiding spots could Naruto establish for the sake of, in his own words, emergency, ramen? Maria patted the young redhead's shoulder. "Don't worry about it. We'll wean him off ramen eventually." "Do you really think so?" "No." Night was rapidly approaching when Naruto woke up from his nap. As soon as he was lucid enough, the young man immediately began to gather all of his supplies and tools, aware that he should probably make the best of his training. Ero Sennin gave him quite a bit of paper slips to practice Fuinjutsu on, giving him plenty to practice on if he so wanted. He has actually learned about Fuinjutsu before, so he knew the basics, like how to make a paper bomb for instance. Though, muffling energy signals were definitely a bit more complicated than that. And something that he, only recently, managed to nail down. At least, he hasn't completely neglected his training. Kakashi said, "To have actually developed a new skill is better than nothing. No matter how impractical it may be in combat. We'll have to have an evaluation of his skills when he returns," Tsunade opined. Kakashi paused and thought, could we not just make our review from this, whatever it is? A proper one, Kakashi. Damn it, he had no problem training or sparring with his student. But, a full-fledged evaluation? The boy was a sage, now. Kakashi wanted to be able to walk home. Basically, he wasn't a master by any means, but he had a decent grasp on what to do. Naruto barely dabbled in Fuinjutsu back in his world, but now, in this world, it suddenly became much more important to learn about. Especially when he remembered all of the incredible things that Fuinjutsu could legitimately accomplish, which inspired him to actually, really, give it a shot. It was rough at first, but he thought that he was doing all right, all things considered. Though he doubted that he'd ever become good enough to use Fuinjutsu to head back home or anything, so that idea was out of the question. Naruto was still thinking about his actions throughout the last 2 months as he was putting on his casual clothes and walked outside, prepared to start his search. Since, by this point, it was quite dark, he decided to forego his usual practice of fitting in and just began to jump across the rooftops at breakneck speeds. "That's incredibly ninja-like," Issei commented. "It's kind of badass. Do all of you guys run like that?" He received nods from the Konoha shinobi. "You must be enjoying yourself, Rias. Be quiet, Akano." The heiress adamantly ignored the teasing smile of her friend. She wouldn't ruin this for her. Thankfully, as he was moving, and after doing some brainstorming, the blonde quickly remembered that there was a forest-like area at the northwestern part of Kuo town, having passed by it when he entered the town in the first place. Perfect. Changing course slightly, the shinobi soared through the many buildings of the human settlement, reaching his destination in a matter of seconds. When he actually arrived, he quickly gave the forest around him a once-over, determining whether it would work for him. Not bad, nowhere near as impressive as Konoha's forests, but I doubt that any forest in this world can top that. Naruto said with a grin, as he decided to drop his supplies on the ground to begin. He needed to actually draw the seals that would suppress energy signals, one that would work for a decent enough area for his training. Thankfully, he had plenty of practice with his 2-month time frame. As soon as Naruto finished drawing those very seals, the blonde twitched, cut off from his work as he felt something. It was a spike of energy from a ways away, supernatural energy, which he has gotten used to thanks to his 2-month stay in this world. Looks like I'm about to win free lunch, Kakashi gloated with a smile. Get ready to pay up, Tsunade-sama, Shizune. The Hokage widened her eyes in minor panic. No, betting on Naruto hasn't led me astray yet. Is his luck running out? Not so fast, Kakashi. Shizune declared, pouring rain on the copy nin's parade. The wager was to see how he'll step upon the supernatural stage. There's no guarantee he'll become intimately involved with it from just one encounter, she stated confidently. After all, this wouldn't be his first brush with it, and yet, he still hasn't been exposed to every faction. Kakashi paused in thought and promptly choked on air. This is what I get for making a wager on something so vague. Shizune was clearly taking advantage of the ambiguity of the stipulation. Worst part was that he couldn't refute her interpretation of the bet. This sucks. Shizune's right, Kakashi. Tsunade taunted. Looks like the wager is still in effect. Sakura and Ino rolled their eyes. To think Kakashi and Shizune would indulge in Tsunade's vices. It was a pretty pointless wager in their opinion. Did the Jonin forget that Naruto was manipulated to join a school by the supernatural? They both sighed, before locking gazes with each other. Silently, they agreed to just enjoy the fireworks until it became hazardous for them. Emil says Tsunade-sama throws the first punch, Shikamaru whispered to both girls. That's a losing bet, Nara. No thanks, both Kunoichi chorused. Shikamaru shrugged. A guy could try. At first, the shinobi didn't recognize it, but he did sense that, whatever it was further up north in the forest. For a few moments, he stayed like this, trying to grasp at this feeling. Then it clicked in his head, an image of bat-like wings on an individual's back appearing in the forefront of his mind. He didn't know what it was called, but he did know which group this feeling belonged to. One of those weird supernatural creatures, devils. Both Maria and Mio silently gasped, trepidation quickening their pulse. That forest looked awfully familiar. So, magic? Maybe? He wasn't sure. Regardless, Naruto grabbed his supplies again and resealed them, taking them with him as he began sprinting to the source of the energy, frowning visibly. Whatever was out there, he had to check it out before he could begin any training. Besides, he was curious. It was a good choice. Scout the area and confirm your security. He needs to tread cautiously in his situation. Neji nodded approvingly. Considering the spike of energy, maybe there was a fight sparking out ahead or something, which could actually be a good stress reliever for him to watch now that he thought about it. Or not, Neji sighed in disappointment. Perhaps he gave his comrade too much credit. Hey, Tenten chimed in. As long as he doesn't expose himself, he'll be fine. I guess. Have faith in Naruto-kun, Neji. Lee chastised. Yelled at his rival much to the Hyuga's exasperation. Honestly, Neji wondered if he was a Buddha in a past life. His springtime of youth burns passionately. Can't you see it, Neji? No, I can't, Lee. He just wanted to exercise in a forest and luck gave him the finger. The Hyuga Jonin voiced in his mind. A false smile spread over his expression, I guess. Naruto eventually ended his musings when he came upon a peculiar sight once he reached his destination, a battlefield. A battlefield that was recently made thanks to the people that were occupying this piece of the forest. And right in the middle of it were two females, who were very much surrounded. Standing back to back against one another, those two girls were amidst a virtual sea of creatures of all shapes and sizes. Which were obviously here with deadly intentions. Those are some butt-ugly creatures, Kiba quipped, his eyebrows knit together in surprise. The Konoha group nodded together, revulsion apparent in their expressions. Not even the summoning animals were that unaesthetically pleasing. Those are stray devils, Yuki supplied to their benefit. Devils who have been corrupted by their own power either by defecting from their superiors or the individual was just evil by nature. They lose all sentience and become nothing more than beasts. A true menace to humanity. Every shinobi grimaced. They could clearly understand why the hero tribe was established. It was similar to their own modus operandi. People contracted ninja or any other kind of capable warrior to protect them from a threat. And within the elemental nations, their menace to society took the form of bandits, ronin and missing nin. Among them, the shorter one was a short girl with childish features, with very risque clothing, if it could be called that anyways. What the hell kind of clothes are those? Sakura yelled out, entirely scandalized. There was a very prominent blush across her cheeks. It was an expression mirrored by her comrades. It's a fashion statement, Maria answered calmly with a hint of amusement. And just what kind of statement is that? A wise statement. The Konoha group could only gape in surprise at her. Those clothes had to be spawned from the most depraved minds of men. Jiraiya may have been proud. Or jealous. She takes Lolita to a whole new level, Issei whispered out in mild approval. His cheeks were burning as Asia tightened her grasp on his arm. It had no effect. You're a fucking pervert, Saji said softly, despite the blood rushing through his own cheeks. At least, I'm honest, bucket boy. Maria-san was it? Shizune asked with genuine concern, don't you think you're a bit too young to be wearing clothes like that? The succubus blinked before adopting a sly and seductive expression. Every shinobi gulped as the silver-haired girl crossed her legs. She was putting on a show, my dear. I live in a world of angels, devils, gods and magic. Her voice was like bourbon, sweet and intoxicating, demanding appreciation from the indulgent masses. Do you truly believe this to be my real appearance? Oh, Shizune squeaked out as her blush darkened, and once again, the expression was mirrored by her comrades. That girl, Ino said with trepidation and a bit of excitement. She's dangerous. Sakura concluded for her friend, eyes wide in disbelief. What do you think she is? I don't want to know. She wore what looked like a black leather top that only covered her up to her ribs and two black straps crisscrossing to make an X over her stomach. She also wore pink and white striped stockings, as well as a pair of, quite visible, black underwear. Her long silver hair, which reached to the middle of her back, was flailing around as she jerked her head around her, and her purple eyes were glistening sharply at the dangerous situation that she found herself in. Naruto frowned, narrowing his eyes, studying her closer as he noticed something framing the crown of her head. Wait, were those horns? Naruto couldn't help but do a double take at the sight of the little horns on the girl's head, but quickly snapped himself out of it. Maria could feel the eyes of everyone on her, but only one gaze truly had her feeling uncomfortable. She chanced a glance back, her own deep violet orbs meeting those of striking, yet cold red, and immediately, she lost her breath. She froze as if ensnared by the very magic the woman employed. It was so difficult to stay calm as she looked upon her. Graphia. Quickly regaining her breath, Maria turned back to the screen. She reminded herself that she needed to stay alert for Mio's sake. Now really wasn't the time to stare. So, taking chance that was given to him in the apparent lull in the fighting, the blonde focused his attention on the other figure who, he assumed, to be the Silverette's partner. The other girl was far more, physically at least, likely to be around the blonde's age, and thankfully didn't make him feel like he was committing a crime by staring. Oh, so it wasn't just me. Nah, Shikamaru, Kiba said with a forced smile, I know exactly how you both feel. She had vibrant red hair, which was partially pulled into two separate pigtails that were held together with a pair of long black strings, with the rest of her hair flowing freely down to her waist, framing her pink eyes. In terms of physique, she was practically the polar opposite of the other girl, as she had quite the voluptuous body, which was contained in a pink top that was hanging on her shoulders, and a frilly blue skirt to complete her ensemble. All in all, the duo was quite the interesting pair, one that most wouldn't see every day. And they were both clearly under great distress, since they were up against multiple monsters on all sides. Mio-chan, Maria-san. Rias called out in concern. Both girls could see the curiosity and worry in the Gremory heiress. Why exactly were you both in that area so late at night? And why are there so many strays attacking you both? Mio flinched, an act witnessed by the entire Kuo pact. Mio-chan, are you alright? Rias-sama, may we please just continue? Maria asked softly, surprising a few of the audience members. It was tad bit uncharacteristic of the seemingly young girl, sharply contrasting with the excitable and enticing behavior she usually exhibited. The red-haired heiress frowned, her brow furrowed in confusion. She wanted to press on with her questions simply out of genuine concern. However, she noticed just how uncomfortable her junior was acting. I understand. But, Mio-chan, I don't know what's troubles you. Just know that you can trust me, she smiled. We're friends, Mio. Please, dig that knife deeper, Rias. Mio offered a hesitant nod alongside a strained smile in response. Naruto stared at the two of them for a moment, stuck in indecision. If he wanted, he could just leave and pretend that this never happened. After all, they weren't his problem anyway. Hell, he didn't even know if they were good people or not, so maybe helping them could be a bad thing? He was supposed to lay low, so helping random people would just garner him attention from unnecessary people, and he has no guarantee that they were even worth the effort. The smart thing to do here was to turn away and pretend that he didn't see anything. Yeah, the smart thing. Naruto-san is truly a kind person, Asia said softly. Yeah, Issei agreed with a wide smile. I'm glad I'm friends with him. Sighing, the blonde swiftly took out a hidden kunai under his right sleeve, already knowing that he never was good at doing the smart thing. If things got rough for him for helping out others, then so be it. The traits of a good Samaritan, Gabriel said with smile. If more people could adopt such principles. She shook her head, bringing her attention back to the screen. His skills and character would make him an excellent member of our community. Zenobia considered how her life would be with Naruto as a comrade sworn to the church. She couldn't deny that it would be an interesting prospect. He might be a handful for Griselda-san. Irina giggled at the thought of her superior disciplining the Uzumaki. Life would be pretty fun with the blonde around. And with his strength, they would have such a dependable comrade. Irina, do you think we'll meet him? I hope so. Much rather that than bear with the guilt of abandoned people in need to monsters. Without making a sound, the shinobi charged in, intent on getting those girls out alive and unharmed. The first of the monsters that took notice of the blonde was an ugly half-human, half-fish monstrosity, which barely managed to notice him as it turned around, making an attempt at roaring out to grab the attention of the other beasts. Oh gods, it's even uglier up close, Ino said with a grimace. Her friends only nodded in agreement, their expressions mired in slight revulsion. They would gladly take bandits any day of the week over stray devils. Hell, even missing Nin would be far more welcomed, as dangerous as that was. It was far too slow. With eyes so sharp that it was unbefitting on the face of a teenaged boy, Naruto swiftly swung his fist at the stomach of the beast, knocking all of the air in the monster's body. With that done, he quickly and efficiently stabbed his kunai through the monster's throat, ending its life before it ever got the chance to warn its comrades. Efficient, Tsunade observed. Silence your enemy and pick the rest of them off at your leisure. Tactically sound. There was a swell of pride in her voice. She had never seen Naruto operate in the field, but she was approving of his discretion. Unsurprisingly, the shinobi wasn't too concerned about mindless monsters, as he felt nothing but bloodlust from them. Not waste any time, he moved on to the next one. A man that had a pincer for a mouth and sharp claws for hands. A combo that was pretty damn gross if you asked him, but hey, it wasn't about to matter in about a second, as the shinobi finally decided to announce his presence to ally and foe alike in a true Naruto-like fashion. I hope you bastards didn't try and start the party without me. Naruto shouted in exuberance as the bug man quickly turned around, only to be met with steel for its trouble, as the kunai dug deep into its probable brain. Or just expose yourself, you little brat. The Hokage fumed. The boy had the advantage, why discard it? She would have words with Naruto the next time they met. Calm down, Tsunade-sama. Shizune said in concern. I'm sure his frustrations over his current situation is subconsciously impairing his judgment. He's probably just looking for a way to vent despite how inappropriate it is at the moment. The busty blonde sighed. She wasn't truly angry. She just didn't desire to see Naruto take unnecessary risks. So, she was a tad bit protective. Condemn her. Could you really fault her, though? The Kuo pact, mostly Sona and her peerage, were visibly impressed at just how skillfully Naruto disposed of his enemy. However, Akano couldn't help but get excited. How dominant Naruto appeared on the battlefield was clearly recognized. She bit her lower lip to stem her rising excitement. The bug beast fell like a stone, with Naruto charging towards his next victim. As soon as Blonde's declaration rang out, it stopped the fighting that was about to start anew for a split second, long enough so that everyone there could acknowledge the newcomer in slight shock. That shock vanished for the monstrous creatures when they saw that two of their comrades were down, and who exactly was responsible. Two monsters quickly flew into a frenzy and charged the blonde, getting him to start a new round of clever in his mind quips, before he noticed that the third and final monster was about to take advantage of the girl's momentary distraction. "Oi, don't gawk at me. Look out," Naruto shouted to them, breaking both of them out of their reverie. In alarm at the incoming attacks, they both moved to dodge the final monster's assault, but the redhead was too slow, and was stabbed by one of the monster's sharp legs right through her shoulder. Mio flinched at seeing herself injured. She remembered that night clearly. They had been traveling for a good while gathering supplies, before being ambushed by those strays at their own safe house. She wouldn't deny being afraid as they ran in search of safety, dwindling their numbers by piecemeal. But that night would forever be highlighted as her most fortuitous. All because on that hopeless night, she met him, her savior, Naruto. "Mio-sama!" The little silver-haired girl cried out, charging forward to engage the final monster, her face twisting in worry. "Hang in there." Right at that moment, Naruto realized that, while holding back was important, this was not the time for doing so, as those two were now barely holding out. So, with practiced ease, he dodged both the flying goblin's nosedive and the standing pit bull's hard fist, before channeling wind chakra through his kunai. In a blink, the shinobi moved to the side of both monsters, sliding, in order to line them both up for a shot. Without hesitation, he threw the kunai at speeds neither of the beasts could react to, and cleanly pierced both the pit bull and flying goblin through their chests. Both beasts fell in short order. "I know we saw a glimpse of his skills earlier, but this," Sona said in slight surprise. There was a bit of awe in her voice. But more than that, it made her realize just how hard she needed to train to reach the summit of strength. In Devil Society, strength was vital and she needed to find her own path to it. A strength needed to fight for her ambition. She noted once again how Naruto was inspiring her. "He is very impressive," Tsubaki added as she focused on the screen. Various abilities to confront multiple scenarios of combat. She shook her head, her dark hair softly swishing about. "I am glad he doesn't consider us as enemies." Though Naruto didn't actually see them fall, as he was already moving to back up the kid, confident enough in his skills to know that they were down. As the blonde ran towards the final monster, which was preoccupied with the scantily dressed girl, he brought out the kunai hidden in his shirt's left sleeve and channeled wind chakra through it as well. Ducked under the body of the strange hybrid of a spider and a woman, he sliced off each one of its legs before the monster even realized what had happened. When she did, however, it screamed out in pain and stumbled back on her stumps, giving the scantily clad girl the opening that she needed. The silverette then brought her small fist out and smashed her fist at the spider-woman's body, sending it through a tree, practically taking it down and killing the monster instantly. "What the hell?" Kiba stumbled for words, entirely surprised at the controversial little girl's strength. Both Tsunade and Sakura were honestly surprised. Being respective heavy hitters themselves, they felt their respect grow for the perverted girl. "That physical strength is similar to Tsunade-sama's," Shikamaru analyzed. His brow was furrowed in thought. "Now, is that strength natural or is it through the use of an enhancement ability? Does it really matter?" "She still has the strength to punt a full-grown monster through the air," Tenten said in disbelief. There was still amusement in her expression, however. "Either way, I wouldn't want to be defeated by a little girl with a wardrobe malfunction on any day of the week." A majority of the audience grimaced upon thinking of Maria trouncing them in combat. How embarrassing that would be. The succubus herself was chuckling in amusement. "Don't underestimate this lowly, boys. You'll come to regret it. Or, maybe not, you might actually like being dominated by me." Most of the audience flushed scarlet as they shook their heads. That girl was a certified pervert. And, just like that, the little battle was over. Naruto wasn't focused on that, however, as he moved to the red-headed girl which had received the stab wound, face tight with slight worry. He wasn't a medic by any means, but thankfully, he did have a basic knowledge of some basics, thanks to being around Ba-chan and Sakura-chan. Taking a cursory glance, he quickly figured that the wound wasn't bad, it was superficial. Still, she was unconscious, though he doubted that it had much to do with the attack itself. As he was checking her out, He quickly noticed the dark bags there were under her eyes, making his lips flatten. The girl was exhausted. Mio-chan. Rias bit her lip, honestly concerned over the circumstances surrounding both girls on screen. Just what was haunting them and why wouldn't they reach out to her? Surely, they knew that she would extend a helping hand, right? If she was already at the brink before she actually got stabbed, then that could have probably made her collapse thanks to sudden the pain, shocking her system enough to knock her out cold. In short, she needed rest, desperately. While this was happening, the silverette cautiously moved to the blonde man's side, anxiously waiting for whatever he had to say. The two of them were in a bad spot, so while she didn't trust him completely, he did prove to, at least, want them alive. Something that she couldn't say that a lot of people wanted. Mio-chan, Maria-san? Rias questioned with a stern tone. Her worry was palpable at the moment. Both girls seemed to be pointedly ignoring her. The Konoha group witnessed this with interest, Kakashi voicing out the obvious. They seemed to be hiding something from their friends. Yeah, Tsunade narrowed her eyes, her fingers drumming the armrest of her seat. Do you think they at least made Naruto aware of their situation? After all, Mio-san seems to have bonded with him closely. Ah, so you also noticed her distress upon the reveal of Naruto's origins. Yeah, it was quite surprising to be honest. A beat of silence passed as they continued observing the standoff between the two red-haired girls. Tsunade-sama, I trust you are aware of the complications this will create. I'm well aware, Kakashi. For now, let's just keep watching. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Understood, Hokage-sama. Mio-chan, I believe you owe it to your friends and yourself to enlighten us about your situation. Rias said sternly, brooking no quarter. The younger devil could feel her hands trembling. It doesn't matter, Rias-senpai. She said weakly. It's been resolved. Mio-san, I know you may feel pressured at the moment, Sona spoke softly. The Citri noticed the affect their questioning was having on the hybrid. Feeling sympathy, she would ease her junior's discomfort. But, we're simply worried. You're a student and resident of Kuo and as such, you are under our protection. We can't do that if we're left in the dark, however. Mio licked her lips, hesitation keeping her silent. She was scared of her new friends spurning her because of her blood. The things she would do to distance herself from the name, Lucifer. How it haunted her. Mio-chan, please. Rias nearly begged. Stop, Venelana ordered, surprising the Kuo residents. Rias, Sona, I understand your concern, but Mio-san isn't comfortable or ready in divulging about her past. Please, leave it be before a mistake is made. Both heiresses frowned as Mio looked relieved. However, Rias spoke out her suspicion. Okawa-sama, you're aware of Mio-chan's situation, aren't you? I am. Then. But, not by her volition. The situation is complicated, Rias. She will confide in both of you when she's ready. Have faith in your friend, girls. A moment of silence befell the audience. The heiresses stared at each other, a silent conversation being held in regards of the matter at hand. Shortly, they broke their locked gazes and the Gremory heiress spoke. I understand, Okawa-sama. Both Rias and Sona nodded in acquiescence. It won't matter, Maria chimed in with a guarded expression. You'll find out anyway. The audience again fell into silence, before Azazel broke it with a sigh. Look kids, I'm aware of your situation. That shocked all of the Kuo students. It kind of sucked being ignorant of important information and current events, don't be so surprised, I'm a well-informed guy. Mio, Maria, you have nothing to worry about from me and anyone loyal to me. It was clear what was left unsaid. He couldn't account for those who would go rogue for a chance to strike at them. But, it was more than enough and they nodded in gratitude to him. The same goes for the church, Mio. Gabriel spoke, surprising the students and even the exorcists. Remember this child. A flower cannot choose where it blooms. Thank you. Mio weakly said, nearly breaking into tears. Maria grasped her hand, reminding the girl of their solidarity. The Kuo pact observed them, all the more worried, and Yuki couldn't help the sympathy that arose within. That boy's very own words from the night they fought came to mind. What has she done to you? What gives you the right to dictate whether she lives or dies because of something she can't control? Her heart skipped a beat as she thought of the boy that challenged her beliefs. What do you think that's all about? Sakura shook her head as she answered her friend, I don't know, Ino. But, apparently we're going to find out. It looks like we're not the only ones being granted knowledge of some sort. Yeah, the Kunoichi of Team 7 couldn't help but worry about what she may come to learn later on. It was a sentiment many of the shinobi were sharing. More than that, he helped them fight off a lot of stray devils when it would have been easier to just stay out of the whole affair altogether. Plus, if she really thought about it, she doubted she could really do anything to stop him anyway, since the skills he used to take out the insane devils were outside of her abilities. Unless she used her trump card, but she wasn't willing to risk it with Mio-sama in such a state. The girl is fine, just tired, the wound ain't too serious either, so she will be alright as long as she gets some rest and cleans up the wound. Naruto finally spoke up with a small smile of reassurance. The girl let out a sigh of relief at the news and nodded her thanks, moving to her young charge in order to pick her up with her strength. In the process of this, she was going to thank their savior properly, before she froze up. Naruto frowned at the Silverette's sudden reaction, becoming wary of another attack. What's wrong? Are there more of them? No, it isn't that. The girl with the horns replied, her eyebrows scrunching as she pondered on their bad position. The reason that she was locking up was simple. The both of them were moving around during the middle of the night for good reason, unfortunately, as their last refuge was found out by the very stray devils that were hunting them down. No doubt, to them, they were probably just like two tasty snacks to be devoured. If they returned to their last refuge now, then she had no doubt that they would be attacked by even more stray devils, especially the ones that were instinctively looking to raise their own strength. Her young charge was half human, and the unique smell that she had thanks to her ancestry helped attract stray devils from quite the distance away to her, in the hopes that they could eat what they viewed as a delicacy. Half human? A hybrid? Tsunade questioned in earnest surprise. Yes, Azazel answered with a smirk. Humans are physiologically compatible with supernatural entities. Of course, you would say that, brother. Gabriel glared at the Governor General, the man pursing his lips and keeping his eyes on the screen. He didn't want to tempt fate, best to just keep silent. Rias, Sona whispered. Do you think she's related to one of the pillars? Perhaps. That may be why Okawa-sama is aware of Mio-chan's dilemma. Our siblings are probably aware as well. Oh, there's no doubt about that. Not only that, but the redhead was also unconscious. Before she could fall into despair due to their situation, an idea sprang to mind, which could probably buy them some reprieve, a temporary home. A safe place to rest. Internally preparing herself, she quickly turned to their blonde savior and pitched her idea. Hopeful. My young charge is wounded and unconscious, while I am tired from the day's fight. Taking that into account, I'd like to ask you whether you could offer us a temporary home where we could recuperate. In return for this favor, I wouldn't mind doing whatever you want for payment. Most of the audience gasped or gaped in surprise, the implications of her words apparent to all but Kuno. Maria. The succubus said nothing, only a grim smile adorned her pretty features as she focused on the screen. Okawa-sama, the young kitsune began. Why are you so surprised? The mother blinked as she heard her daughter and felt distinctly uncomfortable upon the girl's scrutiny. It's just that a girl needs to be careful about the choices and pledges they make, Kuno. Otherwise, she may find herself in a world of hurt and trouble. Innocent wording aside, Yasaka prayed that she managed to convey the severity of the issue. She hoped her daughter took her words to heart. Kuno frowned, her cute face scrunched and thought. I think I understand. The girl should be scared if it was anyone else because they could be a bad person, right? So then, that girl is safe because it's Naruto. She smiled widely upon her conclusion, her tail swaying languidly in apparent ease and confidence. Because Naruto is a hero. Yasaka as well the Kuo and Konoha residents gaped at the little girl. She had such faith in the Uzumaki. The mother couldn't help but break into soft laughter at Kunu's response, yes. Maria-san is safe because it's Naruto. She's very fortunate. The audience calmed down and pondered just what kind of impression the blonde Uzumaki left upon the young girl. Even as she was speaking, she was cringing at the possible degrading things that she may have to endure, well aware that offering herself up like that could very well remove the young man's inhibitions. But it was fine, as long as it was for her charge's sake. Every woman except Ophis and Madaka grimaced, understanding the silver-haired girl's plight. She was her guardian, and even if she rarely conversed with her, she was still someone that she would guard, no matter what. Always, Mio-sama, Maria whispered to her ward, the younger hybrid biting her lip in silence. Mio really wanted to convey her gratitude, but she felt words were hollow at this point. She wanted to do something, she just didn't know what. It didn't matter, however. The succubus could see the vibrant emotion within those pink eyes, the appreciation brimming within the girl. That was more than enough. Which was why she was locking eyes intensely with the blonde, showing him her grim determination. Naruto didn't say anything at first, the only cues being that he raised his arm up slowly into the air, hanging there, as if he was raising his hand for the teacher to call him. Then he suddenly swiped his arm back down, slamming his hand down onto the silverette's skull. Hard. What the hell is that idiot thinking? Sakura cried in surprise and frustration. It should be pretty obvious, Sirsex answered with a smile. The medic Nin reined in her temper, taking in a deep breath. She had no desire in offending a foreign and powerful political leader, and what would that be, sir? Be it man or woman, such assumptions are highly insulting. Sakura blinked as she processed the man's words. Upon review, Naruto had reason to be justifiably pissed. It was a slight to his character, and even if Maria didn't know him, common courtesy dictated to be granted the benefit of the doubt. Still, to strike the girl, or woman, whatever Maria was. She ceased that thought immediately, recognizing how hypocritical it would be to condemn her teammate. She would uppercut anyone that made such assumptions of her. Her cheeks burned in mortification. You just realized you would do the same thing, didn't you? Ino asked with a wry grin. Shut up. The girl yelped as she faceplanted onto the ground with a comical bump upside her head, recovering after a spare second as she looked up at the blonde with teary eyes. He didn't look amused. The shinobi, for his part, was very upset at the thought that someone would think that he was heartless enough to take advantage of the situation. Among the duo, the redhead was out cold, and needed rest, while her guardian was exhausted, leaving both incredibly vulnerable in the middle of the forest where they could get attacked again. For all intents and purposes, he was going to offer them a place to stay anyway. Wait, are you girls currently living with him? Ino asked of the two with a raised eyebrow. Mio nodded with an expression saying that it should have been obvious. So, that's why you called him your Oni-chan. I'm sorry, but Mio-sama didn't just call him so. Maria spoke seriously, her very countenance adding weight to her words. It held the attention of everyone, she declared it. The scion of Lucifer blushed as the audience gaped at the succubus. Maria. What are you saying? Only the truth. Your truth is giving people the wrong idea. I don't understand, Mio-sama. What can be so wrong about your love for your Oni-chan? Mio yelled in frustration as the silver-haired Lolita innocently smiled the entire time. It was honestly infuriating. Though, no one would understand that Maria purposefully did such things to distract Mio from their worries. As they witnessed the duo's banter, Rias and Sona had never been so grateful at this moment. They didn't need nor want to experience someone poking fun at their own relationships with their respective siblings. One had to appreciate the small things. That girl, Akeno spoke, freezing the heiresses in place. There was an uncomfortable chill upon their back. She's good. I must convene with Maria-san later. Of course, before they disappeared. Rias and Sona swore that no matter what, this could not be allowed. Plans to lay low and avoid garnering attention to himself be damned when he saw good people in such a desperate situation. Despite his anger, however, he couldn't help but be impressed by the Silverette's actions, as she obviously hated what she was doing, but still did it anyway for her friend. Who wouldn't respect something like that? It is admirable, Tsunade commented, before breaking into a frown. Still, you should be more careful. Maria nodded in understanding. Thank you, and I'll take your advisement to heart. It's all anyone can ask. Why don't you try asking nicely next time, Naruto questioned, his eyes now reflecting how many points she had won with him. The girl in question blinked in shock, before trying again, hoping against hope. Will you please give us a place to stay so that my friend here can get better, please? Sure, Naruto replied cheerfully, nearly making the girl faceplant with how easy it was. Now, introductions. Something simple. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. Your turn. Huh? Oh, well, my name is Naruse Maria, and the unconscious girl here is my charge, Naruse Mio. The now dubbed Maria said, a growing smile splitting her face. Naruto blinked at that. The redhead was Maria's charge? Huh. This world kept getting weirder and weirder. You know, if it wasn't because of what she told us earlier, I'd agree. Tenten said with an uncertain smile. She still wasn't too sure if Maria was playing them or not. You're doubting it, though. And you're not, Neji? The Hyuga paused to gather the appropriate words. She carried herself with a confidence that even a blind man would take note of. Of course, it would be a man. The succubus chimed in, she was loving the attention. I can charm a blind woman as well. The Kuo and Konoha group flushed scarlet. That girl was incorrigible. Shaking his head, the shinobi scooped up the unconscious Mio and turned to the direction of his home, walking towards it with Maria following in tow, nonchalant about his current situation. It wasn't like helping two random people that were involved in the supernatural would get the world's attention anyway, right? So no harm done. Oh, by the way, Mio-sama is the daughter of the previous Mao Lucifer, so please make sure she is safe. I'm counting on you, Naruto-sama. Maria piped up cheerfully, moving up to the blonde and walking side by side to him. While those unaware gaped in obvious surprise, the Gremory and Citri peerages froze in abject shock. The most affected being Rias and Sona. Both jaws hung loosely and the latter's glasses had slipped off the bridge of her nose. Mio averted her eyes to the floor, not wanting to see the eyes of scorn and suspicion from her friends. The first friends she's made since that tragic night. Xenovia. I know, Irina, the wielder of Durandal responded, understanding her fellow exorcist's concern. She noticed the tension plaguing her partner's muscles, especially the flexing of her dominant hand. Xenovia was sure she herself was experiencing the same thing, but Our Lady has made her decree. She said it herself. A flower can't choose where it blooms. Irina smiled uncertainly. Our Lady is right. I need to pray. She fell silent as she closed her eyes and prayed, seeking strength in her faith. It was an action Xenovia chose to commit as well. Deliver them from temptation and evil, dear Father. Gabriel thought fondly, despite the pang of grief she felt. She was glad the exorcists chose to stay their blades. The seraph was able to sense the conflicting emotions warring within them. Kudos to these girls. Previous Lucifer? Tsunade questioned in confusion, but it was expected. Our government, Tsunade-san, Searsex chose to speak on behalf of their group, consists of the Yondai Mao and the Pillars. My surname is actually the name of my predecessor and is simply a title I and my fellows adopted to rally our race. It was done out of respect for them. He paused as he adopted a melancholic expression, because no matter how corrupted they became or that they had forsaken themselves, our society as a whole respects power. The Konoha group fell into silence as they reviewed what was told to them. Your predecessors were dethroned, Tsunade grimly realized. A civil war? Yes, a very bloody and costly civil conflict. Does this have to do with your race being endangered? Yes, our predecessors wished to continue the fighting despite the risk of extinction. Tsunade desired a drink to drown her opinions on the matter. Just what was it about war that drove people to such extremes? She couldn't understand it. Her subordinates stayed silent in their own thoughts, the topic weighing heavily on their minds. Mio-chan. Rias had finally collected herself as she snapped her eyes to her junior. The heiress noted the girl seemed vulnerable and lonely. She wondered how Mio lived her life prior to her meeting with Naruto. Was she constantly on the run or did she have a home with a sense of stability? Was she even aware of her social status before whatever forced her to run? Sympathy surged through her for the girl, but alongside that was hint of disappointment. Did Mio not trust her? And just why did that bother her? Mio-chan, I wish to speak with you later. The scion of Lucifer only nodded, still avoiding eye contact with her senior and the others. Off to the side, Valley observed the young redhead with interest. So, that girl is my grandaunt. I wonder what kind of life she's led. To think he would have found a devil relative under these circumstances. Life worked in mysterious ways. And she's acquainted with Naruto. Well now, this makes things interesting. Though, I wonder, does grandfather know about her? The bastard probably did, and Valley wondered if the abominable man had any machinations in regards to Mio. If the elder devil did, Valley would disrupt those schemes not out of concern for the girl, but purely to spite Rizavum. The thought brought a smile upon the Hakuryuko. Still, it wouldn't hurt him to learn about the girl just for the hell of it. Naruto suddenly froze, only just registering what she had said. Ehhhhhhhh. That was definitely quite the shock for him, Serafald chirped in amusement. He really snagged the jackpot on that gamble. Rosweiss shook her head with a frown. All that effort to avoid the supernatural and he gets involved with a high-profile individual right at the bat. Truly, his luck seems non-existent at times. But he endures his trials with such optimism. He has yet to falter. Gabriel smiled in excitement. It's highly inspiring. Curious, Grafia posited with a tilt of her head. It's the feeling I've consistently felt in regards to Naruto-san as I've observed him. That was a sentiment many agreed with. It was an apt description for their opinion on the boy. Yellow eyes locked onto the screen of her cell phone, which was ringing, the caller it identifying who it was. What's a cell phone? Sakura asked curiously, surprising a majority of the supernatural group. Madaka didn't truly understand emotions, or at the very least her own. The only time she could ever identify her feelings was when it involved Naruto. It was thanks to him and his society as a whole that she could understand amusement. In regards to technology, the elemental nations were a mixed bag of sorts. They had electricity and plumbing, radio, television, photo and video cameras as well as videocassette recorders. They even had 8-bit to 16-bit computers. But not once had she seen a phone as she viewed Naruto's life. It was hilariously weird, especially since their society understood electromagnetic theory and knew how to operate radio signals for broadcasting and communication. It didn't really make much sense. Adding the fact that ninjas still operated long-distance messaging through homing birds really only confounded the matter. Hell, she had never seen a motor vehicle in the elemental nations. Unless, she accounted the boat Naruto rode into Nami no Kuni as it had an engine attached. As such the concept of combustion and propulsion was discovered. But then, the daimyo were still carried in palanquins. Really? Some aspects of their society were ass backwards. Wait, Azazel's eyes were wide enough for them to just pop out. You guys don't know what phones are? What's a phone? Sakura questioned again. She didn't feel ashamed of her ignorance. After all, she originated from another world. It's a communication device used to speak over long distances. Oh, like radio transmitters. Azazel sighed, at least their society had that. Something like that. He pulled out his smartphone before unlocking the device and tossing it to the kunoichi. Sakura caught the sleek object and was instantly amazed. This is a radio transmitter? Her fellow shinobi all gathered around her marveling at the technology. She seemed to gain an understanding of how to operate it and navigate it around the operating system and its applications. The Governor-General advised her, explaining all of its features and impressing all the ninja. The oohs and ahs reverberated through the terrace and they would admit to it being a very novel experience. Why the fuck doesn't our society have this? Ino cried in envy. She would love to own one of these smartphones. It was a sentiment every shinobi shared. The organization it offers, Shizune said despondently. It'd make life so much easier. Waka, 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 waka. This game is pretty damn fun. Kiba cheered out like a child, unaware of how stupid he sounded. The camera is so high quality, Tenten said in amazement. I can see my scars in the picture. This kind of technology would be a boon to society all over, Tsunade said with wide eyes. Human engineering could go this far? Without chakra? Damn. If you guys employ radio transmitters, then your society is on the proper path to technological advancement. The fallen angel said as he received his phone from Sakura. It will probably hit a few curves, but you'll see it within your lifetime. And so, by Azazel's whimsy the Konoha group fell into the mobile phone craze. They would make damn sure that technology surfaced in the elemental nations. No matter whose arm they had to twist or whose toes they had to step on. The smartphone would rise. Things have changed dramatically since earlier that day, and required her to contact the hero tribe's leader so that he could be aware of the exact circumstances, at least before she could proceed with anything. In the northwestern area of Kuo town, there was a forest area that was perfect for someone who didn't want to be found to do some exercises. Really, that kid's luck is all over the place. Azazel stated, his brow furrowed in confusion. A guy's luck shouldn't be that bad, right? Keeping in shape was paramount for her career as a hero. Mostly everyone nodded in agreement. That belief applied to all warriors, no matter the discipline. Yet, as she was in that forest, she very quickly found that she wasn't alone in the area. Before she could even start back then, something quickly caught her attention, distracting her from her training. It was noise, a lot of noise. Specifically, it was the extraordinarily familiar sound of battle that caught her ear. Opting to go and check out what was going on, she sped towards the source of the sound while trying not to alert the combatants to her presence, cautious. What she would run into was a scene of a battle, one where two females were holding their own against a small group of stray devils. Before she could even do anything productive, a certain blonde would enter the fray, turning the tide of the fight and saving the two girls. She was barely able to hear what they were conversing about, but she managed to catch enough to quickly determine that the redhead among them was, in fact, one of her targets. And her other target, the blonde troublemaker himself, had just thrown his lot in with them. This was, simply the worst possible scenario. I understand that you're under orders and I understand the political climate of the supernatural as well, Tsunade began, her hands balling into fists. But I don't appreciate seeing my shinobi being attacked. Again, it is duly noted, Tsunade-san. Jin said amiably, sympathizing with the woman's protective instinct. It's fortunate that Naruto-kun is an honest and affable kid. He'll be making a lot of allies in our world. Madaka couldn't help but frown upon hearing the hero. Her grip on her bicep tightened, before she exhaled a long breath through her nose. Only Naruto could have such an effect on her, she noted. Excuse me, Tsunade-sama? Yes, Rias-san? I noticed that you said Naruto was attacked, again. She paused as the elder woman's gaze shifted over to her. The Hokage's demeanor was quite imposing. I remember speaking with him where he stated he was being hunted by a group. Is that true? Tsunade frowned, wondering just how much that boy had divulged about himself to these people. Yes, he is. A group of international criminals and fugitives banded together to target individuals of interest throughout the continent. Naruto is a target. Why is he being targeted? Forgive me, Rias-san, but that's confidential. The heiress as well as the Kuo residents frowned. Though, they all understood that they would receive no answer no matter if they pleaded or demanded. Rias spoke, though her clipped tone made her displeasure clear. I understand. Two of her targets were now seemingly allied with one another for whatever reason. And of all of the possible scenarios that could have occurred over the, internally dubbed, unknown variable, the absolute worst has occurred. It was one thing to deal with the first Mao Lucifer's final daughter and her guardian, as their abilities were, she figured, not too impressive when all things were considered. But Uzumaki Naruto on the other hand. She knew that he had a massive source of power, but she thought that he never really got the chance to learn how to use it properly. So, initially, he didn't really seem like a threat. At least, before she saw the thorough slaughter that the blonde had engineered against the stray devils. He was, without a doubt, someone to be wary of. Ostensibly though, if his rush to help the two devils were of any indication, he was probably aware of their relations. Which could only mean that the blonde was aware of the supernatural by the time that she talked to him. This thesis was backed up by his complete lack of surprise by the sight of the many stray devils, as well as his confidence in dealing with them. I'm starting to see why you said everything was a misunderstanding, Yuki-san. Akeno shook her head at the sheer coincidence being stacked against Naruto's favor. No wonder he's a glutton for ramen. It must be his comfort food against all his misfortune. The Kuo and Konoha residents gaped in surprise. That just made a surprising amount of sense. The heroine could only squirm in place. She really just wanted to get past this moment. Thankfully, Uzumaki's focus on the battle most definitely allowed her to study him, so she had to thank her good fortune. Because now, she could, mostly, determine how powerful the teenaged boy really was. If that incident was an accurate representation of his skills at least. Still, what really bothered her? Even as she was thinking it, her yellow eyes were hardening. Uzumaki Naruto had broke his word. He claimed that he wouldn't do anything to harm the normal students in the academy? Well, now that he's thrown his lot in with those devils, he's effectively done just that. Devils and humans had never got along. Especially since devils have always tried to control humans for their own gains. She had no doubt that the two devils in Kuo Academy were the same. Forgive me, Yuki-san, Rias began with small smile. But, I will be frank. I'm glad you had a confrontation with Naruto. You've become a better person because of it. The heroine responded with a small smile, surprising most of the audience, especially her sister, Kurumi. I admittedly agree. I'm grateful to Naruto. Okay, just what the hell has that guy been doing? Kiba asked in astonishment. Almost everyone here has something to praise or thank him for. What's wrong, Kiba? Ino asked with a knowing smile. You jealous? Hell no. Oh, then what's the problem? The Inuzuka growled. I don't have a problem. Then why bring it up? The thought came to mind within the Konoha and Kuo denizens. Whatever you say, dog boy. More than that, she was a warrior with a sense of honor, and Uzumaki had broke that sacred honor. Willingly and irrevocably. He was trash to her now. But he was still very powerful trash, so, for that reason alone, she was contacting her superior. Her musings ended when someone on the other line picked up the phone and answered. Yuki-kun, anything to report? Straight and to the point, good. There have been complications with the new targets you gave me. The former Mao's daughter has allied herself with the unknown variable that you told me about, and that variable has turned out to be very strong. Nonaka Yuki stated with a frown, obviously displeased at the turn of events. The voice on the other end paused, taking in this information before responding. I see. Well then, I'll ask you one question, Yuki-kun. If he's truly that powerful, then I'd prefer it if you didn't face this unknown variable by yourself. However, if you think you can, I'll give you the go-ahead. So, can you do it? The masculine voice on the other line asked, serious. Yuki took a moment to ponder that. Both of the devils were weakened after their fight, which left them as nothing more than burdens rather than reliable comrades. That only left Uzumaki. He was faster than her no doubt, but from what she saw, it wasn't by much. She had fought with speed types before, and she had no doubt that Uzumaki Naruto was a speed type. More than that, he was a short-range fighter, and heavily depended on those two strange knives that he utilized. She now knew how he fought, while Uzumaki had no idea how she fought. The young hero clenched her fist, remembering her duty. Her training. She was a soldier and she would do her duty. I can do it, Yuki claimed with conviction, prepared to eliminate Uzumaki Naruto if he gave her a reason to doubt his word. The heroine could only sigh at her mindset. She was so glad to have met Naruto. Very well, you have my permission to continue forward. The masculine voice stated in a firm voice. Your main objective is Uzumaki Naruto, since the daughter of the original Lucifer is being hunted down by the fervent supporters of the recently made government in the underworld, so best to focus on watching her. She will probably die in time, but this unknown variable must be dealt with, understood? Rias and Sona grimaced at the callous remark about Mio's fate. The tragic fact was that Taju Jin wasn't wrong to assume such a scenario. And it was something both heiresses refused to accept. Yuki nodded in understanding, recalling what she has heard about the situation in the underworld. Apparently, only recently has the previous Lucifer actually been caught and executed by the underworld's government after he escaped from his defeat at the hands of Searzek's Gremory and his comrades. Now, while the current Yondai Mao don't support the Zealots, they really couldn't do much about it, even if they tried to force the issue. The group was pretty popular with those that wanted to completely prevent any possible counter-revolution from occurring. Has your society stabilized, Searzek-san? Both Lucifer and Leviathan grimaced upon remembering the situation back home. They were aware that the boy did not intend to incite such a response from the public. But, forgive them for being justifiably vexed. There has been a surge of civil unrest rather recently, Searzek confessed to Tsunade. He knew he shouldn't be divulging such sensitive information that could possibly be exploited and used to strike at him. But he had feeling everyone present was bound to find out. So, there was no need to withhold the truth. I see. Many devils who have found themselves at the receiving end of the original Lucifer's heavy hand in the past now had a perfect scapegoat in his daughter, and, despite how relatively unknown she was, they continued searching for her. Mio-chan. Rias was beginning to understand just why this topic left her junior so despondent. It probably hurt her just thinking about it. She had to have been hurt somehow. Her heart went out to her fellow devil. They really needed to talk. Of course, outlawing such a disorganized group would only draw angry mobs without actually stopping it from continuing its work, business as usual. So they didn't, and the hero tribe only recently got their hands on such information, but it was definitely valuable in determining who was the more important target. I won't fail, was all Yuki said, before hanging up the phone. You know, your friends have noted that you've changed, Azazel said with a teasing smile. One could even say that those were famous last words. Azazel, please don't use my daughter as the subject of a morbid joke. Oh, come on. Even you had to admit the context was perfect. The fallen angel laughed heartily as Jin stared at his fellow leader with something akin to exasperation. Yuki felt a bit disturbed, however. She was aware she changed, but it wasn't to the extent that she discarded her persona. Or did she? The heroine ceased those thoughts. That would only lead to an existential crisis. And either way, she was content with the woman she was now. Naruto-kun always seems to be plagued by some kind of trouble, Hinata stated with melancholy. The blonde endured and overcame many trials, but she desired to ease and shoulder some of his burdens. Unfortunately, now the boy was out of reach. At first, it was because of her own hesitance, but now, it was due to them being worlds apart. Once again, she was standing at the sideline gazing upon him, incapable of doing anything for Naruto. Her heart drummed loudly as she sighed longingly. How she yearned to stand by his side. You have to trust him, Hinata. Believe in his strength. The former heiress snapped her eyes towards Sakura, pearls and emeralds reflecting off each other. The Hyuga, by her very nature, was a very patient and pleasant person. Her kindness was acknowledged and admired by her peers. Her unreciprocated love was a testament to that fact. No matter how many times Naruto overlooked her feelings, the boy would be welcomed by her heart. However, that didn't mean she was incapable of feeling resentment. And the girl in her sight was the target of such emotions. How could she not be bitter? When this girl was the apple of his eye. Yet, his care was unwanted. How ironically sad. She swallowed hard, denying the rise of caustic words. Such venom would remain in the pits of her heart. No matter how much it hurt. You're right, Sakura-san. He's stronger than anyone I know. Yeah, the pink-haired Kunoichi smiled ruefully, I think so too. The brat will manage, Tsunade said softly. Her expression eased into a beautiful smile, he never disappoints. Naruto is the one to bet your hopes on. The Konoha group stayed silent as their Hokage finished speaking. Well then, the blonde said with anticipation brimming within. Let's continue. Omake. Part 1. The screen faded to black, but before they could break into conversation magic pulsed through the area. Oh, it's starting up again. Rias said in excitement. I wonder what else we'll see. Who knows? Akeno smiled in glee, perhaps we'll see something embarrassing. If so, I can blackmail Foxy-kun for a favor. Akeno, why not just ask for a favor? Sona asked in confusion. The fallen hybrid only giggled softly, ufufu. Simply because he would definitely deny my request. The heiresses paused as they stared at their friend. They were honestly concerned for Naruto's well-being. Moving on, the Gremory heiress requested really. Naruto couldn't keep doing this. It's been nearly 3 weeks since his abrupt arrival into this new world. As amazing and impressive as this place was, he was honestly homesick. He desperately wanted to ascertain the well-being of his friends. It seems to be a glimpse of how he fared in the beginning of his stay in our world. Jin supposed that it was bound to do so at some point. While it would be boring to see him situate himself, there could be a few moments worth learning about. It must be very difficult to continue on without any kind of confirmation, Venelana said in pity. She frowned, wondering how she would fare under his circumstances. Without her children at the least, she would definitely succumb to depression. And yet he has, the ancient hero said. Kudos to the kid. But, he was stuck. Damn that stupid hole, portal, or whatever it was to hell. If I ever find the jackass who conceptualized space-time manipulation, I'll superglue pounds and pounds of uncooked rice onto the fucker. Then throw him to a flock of birds. A majority of the audience blinked in surprise, struggling to process the boy's thoughts. Whoa, Ino whispered, vindictive much? I wouldn't go that far, Shikamaru tentatively said. But, I can certainly understand him. I mean his whole life has been uprooted. The Konoha residents grimaced in agreement. That's quite the creative punishment, Rainier opined with a hesitant smile. The birds wouldn't leave you alone until they pecked their fill. Azazel snorted, I could picture it now. Some idiot running down the street while being hunted by pigeons. He shook his head, quite the imagination Naruto has. Searsex-chan, Seraphol called out. I think that should be a capital punishment. She paused in thought before smiling widely, for the nobles. Oh, that's a wand. Lucifer-sama, Leviathan-sama. Graphia interrupted, her countenance silencing both. While it is an effective shaming tactic, it still runs the risk of inflicting grievous harm upon the condemned. Their eyes may be poked out. That's the problem you have? Both mouths slackened in disbelief. Issei gave a sidelong glance to Saji. With a smirk, he asked his fellow pawn a question. You glad you got the bucket treatment instead? Shut the hell up, the Citri pawn grumbled. He sighed, expelling that wrathful thought no matter how justified he felt in having such emotions and thoughts. Naruto. Order up. Table 7. Yes sir, the blonde collected his wits and went about doing his current job. Waiting tables in this restaurant was just one of many jobs Naruto had procured to secure money to his name. He had clones employed all over the city trying to secure a weekly paycheck at multiple part-time jobs. It just wasn't enough, however. Now that I think about it. Akeno trailed off in thought. She adopted a curious expression. How was he able to afford a house? And any other necessities? That was an excellent question. It seems we're about to get our answer, Rias replied with a smile. His body went on autopilot, performing his tasks like a simple routine. The Uzumaki was mentally exhausted and the fact that he didn't own some kind of shelter to his name made it worse. His current sleeping abode was terrible in his opinion. A motel that was pretty rundown, horrible and inconsiderate neighbors residing within and his discomfort with the general area. He does look exhausted, Sakura deduced with a frown. He's probably overworking himself and constantly conjuring clones wouldn't help with that. Poor guy, Tenten shook her head. He really is all on his own here. At least, he's making the best of it. Neji said with a hint of praise, his use of clones is resourceful. He would honestly prefer camping out in the community parks. Shame law enforcement denied him that option and he didn't want to be in trouble with the local government. Smart choice, Kakashi approved with a nod. At this point, he was considering renting a room at one of those love hotel establishments. I'm sorry, what? Ino asked in confusion. Her comrades sympathized with her as the Kuo residents blushed. Oh, please don't Naruto. Rias shook her head with wide eyes, anywhere is better than that. What is a love hotel? Ino asked again. It's exactly as it sounds, Azazel said with a chuckle. A hotel offering room and board exclusively for a couple to bang. Despite the crass wording, that was the best way to put it. The entire Konoha group felt heat flare upon their cheeks as their eyes widened. Why would someone make such an establishment? Sakura cried out in shock. Because profit. Oh, it was the only viable reason. Naruto flushed scarlet just from thinking about the place. To think this society offered such services for intimate couples. Jiraiya would approve. The horny toad would, Tsunade thought in agreement. She shook her head in fond annoyance. Though, a semblance of pity arose for the establishment's janitorial staff. The entire audience blanched at the thought of having such a career or part-time job. It must suck being a love hotel's janitor. Oh please, let's move on from this. Issei cried out in terror. He would never wish such misfortune upon someone. To clean up after an intimate couple's moment of paradise. Oh gods, he felt emasculated. And he might just barf. Thank you for your patronage. Please, come again for your next meal. He offered a smile to the group of young women. All of them blushed prettily in obvious interest of him, though he wondered if the food upset their stomach or something. Ah, the dense object of affection. Azazel observed, a sin incarnate. Brother, really? Of course, any person that has to deal with such is only asking for much frustration in their future. I can't dispute that, Gabriel blinked in disbelief. I know. Of course, cutie. Hope to see you again. One of the women said as her friends giggled. The group prepared to leave, but before they walked out the door they all turned to wave and or wink at him cheerily. Every maiden interested in Naruto glared at the women on screen. Damn harlots. Naruto blinked in surprise, before waving goodbye as a courtesy. Such friendly people. +1 to the sin counter. Azazel exclaimed in jest. He knew this trope would be fulfilled with Naruto. The signs were all there. Rainier had quite the mountain to conquer. Gabriel only shook her head. Her brother was enjoying this far too much. Ino groaned in disappointment. You know, Sakura. I have to ask. Why didn't you teach him about the social cues between men and women? What kind of question are you asking me? Sakura, you are the most consistent female figure in his life aside from Ayame. You kind of owe it to him. It's complicated, only if you let it be. Ino shook her head. It wasn't so difficult to just be upfront and honest with people. Hell, even Naruto, as socially inept as he was, understood that much. Naruto, you got a break. Go enjoy it, kid. Thanks, boss. The blonde soon found himself walking out into the market district, pondering his situation. He really needed to find a way to make some quick cash. Too bad mercenaries weren't really accepted by this culture. He could attempt a freelance business, and he already was. It was just unfortunate that the most he could do were simple community services and chores. Naruto hated D-rank missions. He really desired the excitement of being a shinobi. Not a damn dog walker. The shinobi attempted to muffle their laughs as Kiba grumbled in annoyance. Get it out of your systems, you jerks. With that suggestion, they did exactly that. The Inuzuka felt his cheek twitch. Karma would favor him soon. At his peripheral, he took note of an electronics store with television monitors set up on display. It was currently tuned onto the news network. He approached with the desire to learn of something important. And here we have an exclusive interview with dance sensation. Naruto tuned out the name. He didn't care for this. He wanted to see the weather segment. Though, he would admit that the dancing of this world was varied and visually stimulating. Okay, to be honest, it kind of excited him at times. He could appreciate it just as much as the few traditional dances he's observed at festivals during his journey throughout the elemental nations. Still, the dancing of this world. The music videos. Yeah, he could definitely appreciate it. How could dancing excite someone? Ino asked in confusion. Who knows? Maybe this is something unique to their culture, Tenten suggested. Probably. So would Jiraiya. Is it wrong if I'm worried? Tsunade asked in apprehension. No, Tsunade-sama. Shizune meekly said, I can understand your concern. Ah, the Hokage gulped. Their dances can't be that different, can it? I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, my dancing career only rose to prominence when I did public demonstrations. People loved the effort and offered donations. Come again? I swear, in my first demonstration, I made so much money I paid off a year's worth of rent. The whiskered blonde promptly zoned out, ignoring every stimulus around as he delved into his thoughts. Wait, dancing, demonstration, donation. Naruto wondered if this was a sign of some sort and if he should be thanking someone. As soon as he understood, his expression broke out into a wide grin. I know what to do, Datbeo. Oh, this should be interesting. Serafal smiled widely, wondering how a ninja would dance. Can he even dance? Azazel asked in curiosity. There's only one way to find out, Rainier shrugged. Dancing, demonstration, donation. Profit. The audience blinked in mild surprise. Rias smiled in pride. I can agree to that mindset. One should never offer their talents and skills without some kind of yield. Spoken like a true devil, Rias. Sona nodded in approval. Naruto truly understands how society functions. Yes, I would love to be his partner. In more ways than one, the Gremory thought. The sea tree blinked, before shaking her head. She was interpreting Ria's statement wrongly. Well, she hoped. Naruto cheered mentally. It was the next day, the sun was out and the sky was clear. It was perfect. The blonde found himself at the largest community park in Kuo. The place was full of citizens enjoying their recreation activities with family and friends. He was fortunate it had an outdoor amphitheater. Wow, I just can't help but be amazed by their sociology. Tsunade confessed in awe, it's just so different. If Orochimaru was still true to ethics and his previous morals, he would have a field day with this. Well, that was if he was still alive. The Hokage shook her head. The man received his comeuppance. How lucky of him. He disappeared off into a grove, before he spawned a horde of clones. The smoke dissipated into the air before the original spoke. All right, you bastards. We're about to make some noise. And money. The clones cheered. A majority of the audience laughed. Their enjoyment of the blonde's antics was genuine. Damn right. I need my own home, Datbeo. Naruto was truly excited. He was about to make a boatload of money off the simple masses. Honestly, he felt like he was conning them. However, he took solace in the fact that he was providing the community a service in the form of public entertainment. And with that thought, this profitable idea was spawned. Naruto was a genius. Well, I wouldn't go that far. Jin said in an effort to humble the boy. Really, a swelled ego wasn't healthy. And it was the duty of the older generation to curb such arrogance. Agreed, Michael smiled before voicing out his thoughts. Forgive me, but what is he planning to do with clones? The audience blinked as they realized that they couldn't rationalize the boy's actions. I don't know, Serafal felt stumped. This was supposed to be interesting, not confusing. Maybe he'll have them dance at different sectors of the park? Do you have any idea what he's thinking, Kakashi? I'm not too sure, Tsunade-sama. Alright guys, on 3. The horde of blondes counted down until something magical happened. Well, in the honest opinion of men and lesbians. The audience blinked in surprise at the boy's thoughts. What the hell was he thinking? Oiroke. Harem no jutsu. What? The audience chorused in astonishment, their eyes wide from the boy's declaration. Did they hear that right? The entire horde except the original transformed into various women. A majority of them being the women he has met and befriended at some point in life. His friends and comrades, his superiors as well as kunoichi he has from Iwa, Kiri, Kumo, and Suna. They were all present wearing a thigh-high kimono blouse, colored a soft pastel to the respective persona's preference, with long wide sleeves, a white obi binding the top at the waist. Some girls were wearing black shorts that revealed quite a bit of skin, or others wearing black capris along with high-heeled sandals. Every girl wore some kind of ornament in their hair, be it ribbons, bows, headbands, flowers, pins, bells or tiaras. All in all, the girls were dolled up and ready to play. Ero Sennin would be so proud, dat Bayo. Naruto nearly shed a tear. He really knew how to emphasize the in-inness. The jaws of the audience dropped as they stared with wide eyes in silence. The men all blushed heavily at the unforgettable sight. There was a lull in the terrace, the only sounds being of the distant waterfalls and the singing of birds. A long, quiet minute later and the silence was broken with impunity. I'm going to punt that little shit. Tsunade roared, a vein on her brow pulsing an angry red. To see the boy impersonating her was honestly aggravating, even if the clothes she was adorned with was incredibly flattering, and really emphasized her beauty. It was the principle of the matter, damn it. When did Naruto meet the Mizukage? Kakashi asked in interest as he continued to observe the lineup. Even Enko and Yugo are there, he said, before another thought arose. Oh, you're also in the lineup, Shizune. The meek medic Nin only stayed quiet, beyond mortified at seeing herself dressed so provocatively. She was nearing tears. Naruto-kun, how can you place me in such a position? Well, this happened, Tenten said with a clipped tone as she gazed onto her counterpart. Why the hell did Naruto make her look so damn good? She didn't know if she should be flattered or not. Naruto-kun, to think you actually look at me like that. Hinata would admit to being content and proud. She was all smiles at the moment. The next time I see him, Sakura said with a strained smile and prominent blush. I'm going to have words with him. She emphasized her desire with the clenching of her hand, her knuckles cracking with a promise of pain. Oh, what's the problem, Sakura? Ino asked with a smirk. Are you bothered that he's dolled you up? Are you honestly telling me you're not bothered with this? She asked incredulously. Nope, I'm flattered that he thinks of me in such a way. Does wonders for my confidence, the Yamanaka grinned widely. Her eyes were alit with amusement and appreciation, plus, he's dolled me up real cute. When we get back home, I'll be shopping for a similar outfit. Sakura only shook her head. Oh, come on, you have to admit he has taste and dressed you up nicely. The blonde then adopted a sly expression. Makes you wonder how many times he's had you in mind, don't it? Sakura felt a heat arise within. Shut up. The mindwalker only laughed heartily. So, he's capable of this as well. Sonat trembled in trepidation, a healthy blush dusting her cheeks. Honestly, this boy was promising to be more troubling with every passing day. The implications of this ability is kind of scary. He knows far too many women. Rias ground out through a frown. There was a sporting of red upon her expression, however. That's what bothers you? That girl, Akano voiced out, distracting the kings. The whiskered blonde with twin tails. Do you think that's Naruto? The hybrid's heartbeat picked up speed as she noted how similar in appearance it was to her fantasized gender-bended Naruto. Oh wow, Rias noted in surprise. That was a beautiful woman, that definitely has to be Naruto. Akano released a shuddering breath. I see. Azazel broke out into uproarious laughter. This kid is a genius. Jin blinked, honestly wishing for a cigarette. That's one hell of a distraction. Oni-chan, Kurumi called out shyly. Your friend is weird. I know, Yuki said disappointedly. Issei grit his teeth as he clenched his hands. To think you knew such an amazing technique. To think you knew so many beautiful babes. To think, even you can appreciate women and bring out their best qualities. To think, he roared, that you're capable of using such a technique at any time you want for your own viewing pleasure. He shed a tear, a drop of liquid that represented his jealousy and pride. He inhaled deeply, before breaking out into a whisper. You're my hero, Naruto-san. You're fucking hopeless, Saji said as he focused hard on the lineup of women. Don't care. Mio stared at her brother in honest disappointment. He was supposed to be an amazing role model, not a closet pervert. At this instance, she figured she should be righteously angered or genuinely afraid of Naruto's ability. But she couldn't draw up the energy needed for such. It was just so inane. She turned to her guardian, Maria, only to see the Lolita trembling. The succubus expression was hidden underneath a silver curtain of silk. The scion of Lucifer attempted to reach out with a hand, but halfway in Maria raised her head with an expression of admiration and pride. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. Mio felt a headache forming. To think Naruto-sama was capable of such a thing. He truly is an amazing man. An idol that needs to be deified, she said. The older girl clenched both her fists as she made her proclamation. After all, Naruto-sama is a one-man orgy. The entire audience went silent upon her declaration. Everyone flushed scarlet and stared at her with wide eyes, gaping incredulously at the implication of such a statement. The silence drew out for a few beats as the succubus smiled unashamedly. She was only stating her beliefs. Maria. Mio squeaked out scandalized. My sister is in that lineup. Kiba roared out in anger. Azazel cackled in delight of the brat's misfortune. After a good while, the audience settled down to continue the story. But there was a problem. He blinked before addressing the issue. Why did you transform into a pregnant Kurenai? Everyone turned to look at the lone clone that had messed up. That was creepy, Rainier opined. They all did so simultaneously. Like some kind of hive mind, Azazel said. Yeah, I forgot. He even imitated her voice, Shikamaru said with a shake of the head. Down to the last detail. It's a good henge. His fellow shinobi nodded. Naruto sighed, he was disappointed in himself. That's all for now. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments.